There it is, the new entrance song. Liking it, liking it, liking it. That was very uplifting.
Thank you. So, good morning, home church. And who do we have with us today, Nathan?
I don't know. I think you might know him.
I probably know him a little bit better than you do.
I think the folks at home church would be more familiar if they seen the video last Sunday, because he was the gentleman being dunked in the pool in all of his clothing. Didn't care. Went in head first in the cold water anyways. Mr. Jacob Woody. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Mr. Jacob Woody in the house.
Putting me on today.
So, obviously, uh, Clayton had you up. I say obviously, I don't know why I said obviously, but had you get up and give your testimony as to why it was that you wanted to get baptized and what the baptism meant to you. But for those that maybe didn't hear that story or that weren't at church at that moment, um, go ahead and give a little testimony as to what the baptism meant to you and why it was that that was so important for something for you to do.
Well, I mean, I grew up in church my whole life, and I was baptized at a younger age. Didn't really understand what it meant to me as a person. Um, Fast forward through adolescence, and we can go more into depth as we progress. But in the last 2 years being here, decided to make that declaration of faith outwardly again in order to just make that line in the sand that this is a new person. I'm a new person. I'm not the old me.
Amen. And so, also, for those of you that don't know, this is Zach's brother-in-law. Zach, tell us what it's like being the brother-in-law of this gentleman.
It's a lot of fun. It's definitely like having a brother I never had. Not saying that I didn't have a brother. I mean, I have Nick, which is my little brother, but we're 13 years apart. So there's a huge age gap. And having someone that is closer to my age and it has a lot of the same interests that I do is really, really cool. So it's
Right.
been it's definitely been a lot of fun to get to know Jacob over the last 6 years now, I believe, roughly.
It's flown by, really.
Yeah, it has. So
So, question, do you remember the first time you met Zach? And then I'm going to ask you the same question. Do you remember the first time you met him? And I want to see how the stories correlate.
do you need time to think? Because I can try to go first if you need time to think.
I'm bad with memories, man. Like, I'm sure it was some kind of like, I want to think bowling or something weird like that, but I'm not sure.
I want to say it was something like that. Either that or it was a family dinner at your mom's house. I can't
I can
entirely
see,
remember.
yeah, family dinners. That's
But,
pretty important on
yeah,
weekends.
I want to say it was either one of those. But my first impression was the same, almost the same thing I had of Caitlin. Was like, holy crap, this family is tall. So I mean, yeah, it seeing having to look up at Jacob from me being 5'8" and you being well over 6 foot.
Yeah, 6'4" on a good day.
Yeah, and me being 5'8" in heels. So with 2-inch lifts, it's definitely looking up at my wife and Jacob and Marcy, my mother-in-law, and all of them. So it's fun being the short guy of the family. Everybody kind of, well, you guys don't underestimate me, but I've been underestimated my entire lives because I'm short. So it's
John Wick. Um, so, obviously, I know this is going to tie in later on in the story, but we've talked to Caitlin. We had Caitlin on, and then me and Zach have kind of talked about it throughout podcasts since we've done it. But you were one of the individuals that spearheaded the event at Happening. And so we're just going to get, obviously, like I said, I know the Happening, just seeing your family there and delved in it as deep as they were. I know it means a lot to you, so I know this is going to come back later on whenever we talk about your life. But one thing that I would like you to do is we had Caitlin kind of interpret what it was for her. And me and Zach have talked about what the Happening was, a little bit and tossed it back and forth. But what is your definition of if kids, or just adults listening that have maybe siblings that are younger, whatever the case is, how would you describe happening, and what is happening in your sight?
It's a great place for kids who are on the fence about Christianity. The whole weekend is based off of the easiest thing I can explain is grace and love of Jesus and his love for us. And that is a big importance for kids in the middle school. It's technically from freshmen to seniors, and then they can also work in college through coordinating and stuff like that. But it's a good place for kids at that time who might not feel loved themselves in school, or it just are fighting to have that, to know that it's just given freely from Jesus. And I think that's the reason I so strive to be there for every event I'm asked to work and just give it to the Lord for those kids, because it was a big part of my life growing up.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll go ahead and get started. We know that from just Caitlin's story, we know that there is there's going to be highs and there's going to be lows. So we know that we don't give a script out whenever we do this thing. We don't have special questions laid out for you. We just let the Spirit move. So if it's something that you don't want to talk about, we don't have to talk about it. We can move on. We're not going to, it's however deep you want to get. We have no limitations on this. I mean, obviously we do, but somebody's story and somebody's testimony, that's theirs. Scripture tells us that we are to give our testimony, our hope. That's our hope, is our testimony. And so I'm not saying that, I know that I'm the one that sometimes bring the tear-jerking questions into it, unfortunately. But just to let you know that if it's too much, I'm sorry, but I'm a sucker for good testimonies, because a good testimony, when people hear it, they think, okay, well, this guy's, he's tall, he's always got a smile on his face, life's great, and this and this and this, and people don't realize the inside. People don't realize what people have to go through, and that's kind of what this podcast is to help with. Not only is it to help home church people relate, but so the reason that I said that was because I know all of us got teary-eyed whenever Caitlin told her story. So I just wanted to put the warning out there and just give you a heads up that may Caitlin's story. So if you would like to, when does Jacob remember? What was a young Jacob like? Let's start there. So we'll talk about. Obviously, we'll go into when was the first time that you remember Jesus, blah blah blah. But what was life for you like? Like, when do you remember? What do you remember about God? Like, when do you remember your first experience, so to speak?
It's so tough as a boy in the 90s, man. You're just rambunctious and outside all the time. So a lot of the God moments as a childhood were summer, vacation Bible school, stuff like that. And so I think that would probably be my first like real grab into Christianity. Now, my mom was always raised in a church. We did go to church on Sunday, Methodist, raised Methodist. I have nothing against Methodist churches at all. It's just that depending on which ones you're brought into and what they're ministering to and the age groups that they're ministering to, because every church has its own purpose of what they're trying to do. The church we were in wasn't necessarily the best for young kids, but it was better than no church, so we went. And growing up, it was actually DRC was the name of the church, and that was probably where we first did all our missions. Ended up going to, basically I was missions focused. That was when I excelled in Christianity for me, was like, oh, we're going on a missions trip. All right, I'm going to work the hardest. I'm going to be the one moving. I'm always going to be working. That's the way I thought you showed.
The servant's heart, yeah.
Correct. And then... So for me, a lot of my childhood was either running like there was no tomorrow, having fun, or being a physical, moving, working. Wasn't much of a gonna sit down and listen kind of kid. So that's kind of where my childhood started off with. And then fast forward to 13 years old, we were still at DRC. I did at that point go through a small commissions class that they did with the kids, but again, being at 13, 12, more having fun playing with the friends that I made in school. And there were things like, so I didn't quite grasp what I was agreeing to. Not that I didn't accept it once. I mean, I knew what I was agreeing to. It's just, was I willing to follow it wholeheartedly? That's what I was fighting. So come through high school, really the only times I was probably in it for being on the fire for the Lord was at happenings. That's what kept me in grace, I would say. Because, I mean, it's one of those things, you're so mission focused that you want to be there for any time you're asked to be there, but then when you're not asked to be there, well, then you're probably doing things you're not supposed to be doing. So that was a lot of my high school, was making bad choices but looking like I was a good Christian outwardly. And until graduating and meeting, I met my wife in high school, Kaylin, shout out, amazing wife.
Woo-hoo! We're not close to the clap button, but we clap for you, Caleb. We promise we would.
Amazing wife. It's done nothing but kept me centered and grounded the whole 8-9 years we've been married, and over 13 years together pretty much. But that was all my 20s. Sorry.
Oh, no. I would just like to kind of pause you talk about Kaylin for just a second, and just talking about seeing you, my respect for you as far as you and Caitlin both, just how you guys are accepting of family. You are accepting of moving in, helping, taking care of, whether it's Nolan. I'm sorry, I don't remember his sister's name just because.
Hannah.
Hannah, yeah. But one of the things that really shines to me is I mean, I know you guys want children of your own. We're praying and believing for that. But to understand your role as a Christian and as what God has you for, you are a man, like you said, you like to serve, you like to, you're going to work the hardest. And you instill that in these kids that you're bringing with you guys and being around you guys. And I just want to tip my hat to you and say that, because I know for me, I've been around a lot of, my mom used to babysit kids. And so in-home daycare for me, like, I just kind of got used to, having the crying and stuff like that. So when it came to somebody watching somebody else's kids, I know they're not yours, but my mom still took care of them and made sure that these kids were like their own. So I seen that side of, even though, hey, it's not, you still treat them like you are. And I just want to let you know that there aren't a lot of people that would do that, and I tip my hat to you guys and just say we thank you for letting that part of Christ show. You may not see it. To you, I know sometimes it may be disheartening. I know sometimes that it may seem like they're running ragged and it seems like you're tired and you're wore out. But I just want to let you know that it does show. And I see it whenever we go to the Roost and whenever we do all of these things outside of the church. And I just want to tip my hat to you, sir. But
thank you.
So we'll go back to the story. So high school, you said that happening really is kind of what kept your relationship with Christ. And that's kind of like that's kind of my story too, is like I grew up through church all through my childhood. There wasn't a time where I didn't remember going to church, and I was fortunate / didn't understand really the blessing that I had to go to James River. And I know it's a big church, I know all of that stuff, but it really opened my eyes to see that you could be in a church like Home Church or a church like James River, and God's power is still just as full and thick in both. And whenever we went to the happening, just as full and thick in a Methodist church of people, to me, I had no idea, but the Lord was still there. So to still know Him and to still kind of do what you want in this world, he gives you that freedom and he accepts you back. When do you remember feeling that? Because I mean, mine was just 2 years ago or so whenever I started going to home church, but you begin to realize exactly how much, even though you did what you wanted to, the nights that I, not bragging about this, but was drunk driving and drove home. I could have killed somebody. I could have done something awful, but the Lord looked out for me, even though I was doing what I wanted to. Do you remember your moment of, wow, even though I was doing what I wanted to, he was still there?
Sadly, every day.
Yeah.
That I'm now more of an adult figure. I've had a teenager living with me, and it's like trying to explain that, yes, there is this time where you can do what you want, and there's a time where you have to be the responsible person, and then going back and thinking like, wow, I was, you call it luck, but it's not luck. It's because God. That's the only reason that happened. That's the only reason I was saved while 3 or 4 of my other friends in the same time period got their DWIs. I mean, I was not a good person making bad choices, but God protected me, thank goodness.
Yeah.
That is pretty much, you're right. The last 2 years since home church started and all that is where most of this has happened for me as my personal growth in Christ. And I kind of wanted to go back on the childhood stuff. So one thing that, before we get into what home church has done for me, among the thousands of other things they've done, for the church, is being raised Methodist. There's nothing wrong with that, but I was hurt almost from every church I've been to previously to this one. Whether it was our original Methodist church had a thing where it didn't like that our pastor walked behind the pulpit and moved left and right, so they got rid of him. We left. We went to Pathways. Pathways was a great church, and then they got upset with apportionments. The whole upper group, because of how Methodists work, it's all a hierarchy to the top, and we have to pay to the top, and then they distribute it across the whole group of churches. But they were upset with us not paying our half, and I was on the trustees, and I could see what our yearly budget was and what we were spending to just keep the church open, and it was like, we're really nitpicking over what we're trying to do here, because our church was open almost 24/7, running every night for women's shelter, like $300,000 monthly running budget. I'm sorry, your apportionments are being used here to service the local people, kind of thing. And then, then we go to Venture then. And Venture was the first, turning point. Like, Pastor Rick's a great pastor, and I mean, you go in there and you feel God. You know that man is ordained to go bring many people to Jesus and to the Lord. But then again, you still ran into that weird, humans aren't perfect, and we had that thing that happened, and then the church closed, it didn't close, it renamed and moved on and everything. But the first time when we came, it was the first or second Blue Room service at the Blue Room, the first church. And I mean, I remember just sitting there. It was actually the day that they took offering, so it was the first service. I was there, and I remember looking at Kaylin and saying, "This place is going somewhere." You could just feel it that first day. And I knew that at that point, regardless if I could serve here or just better myself in Christ, I was going to do it at home church. So they were the biggest turning point for me.
And so you had just started, I know that it's the greeting and then back here in the media. So what made you decide to start wanting to serve more and to kind of do more behind the scenes? Was it just you? Because, I mean, as much as you did at the happening, it kind of seemed like you were used to serving in the backgrounds and you were used to doing the stuff that, kind of nobody really wanted to do. Jacob was doing it, the trash duty, the making sure the dishes were clean duty and stuff like that. So it seems like you would also be a person to pick up multiple places in the church to serve. But why was it that you picked the media and the greeting and the...
I mean, honest reasons is I'm selfish and I'm not very good at reading the Bible or praying as well as I could be. I'm working every day. But the active moving don't talk kind of person, that's where I'm going to be the most safe in my feeling. Now, last Saturday you were talking about when the Lord pushes on you and it's something you can do and it just feels uncomfortable that you should say yes. Yeah, that's been happening. A couple Sundays ago during when we were doing the growth and all that and laying seed, Pastor asked me to read, and I almost I immediately wanted to say no, but I knew I needed to try, and so I did try, and I know that if I keep trying, I'll get better at it.
Yep.
So basically, you just got to do it.
You just got to find something. And that's what people, they think that they've got to find the perfect spot to start off with. I mean, whether you're wanting to, you're like, man, I really enjoy media. I kind of like the fact that they're doing the online stuff, but that's a lot of buttons and stuff like that. I don't know about that. So you've got to really, just because there's a difference in uncomfortable and then being stupid and doing something. Like there's an obvious thing of, okay, go speak in front of this crowd. Well, I don't want to. It scares me. Well, maybe because it scares me, God doesn't want me. You're not going to get hurt. Nobody's going to hurt you by getting up front and talking to people. Just do it. That's why that's all there. God's just like, do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start doing that, and it just brick after brick after brick. So it's cool to see you grow that way, though. And what was it when, like, I know for me, my instance of, Clayton asked me to speak and stuff, and I hated talking in front of people. When do you remember, like, what it was that you were gonna? Did you have this nice big spiel that you had practiced on, or was it just like, hey, God, at the last minute, I'm gonna let you do your thing?
There's always the talking points that go through your mind, like you're going to try to spin this thing that's going to be perfect. And then you walk up there and it all leaves your head 2 seconds into the thinking. You say, hello, gone.
Yeah.
And then the Lord speaks. And I mean, I've come to find out that you can judge yourself as much as you want because it's the devil telling you weren't good enough for what you said or you didn't say it the right way. But that doesn't matter. God puts it in the person who's listening's brain and lets it unfold the way it's supposed to either way.
Yeah.
And that you just gotta go up there and do it. That again, you're gonna be your worst critic in most of everything you do.
So whenever it comes, we're gonna go back to like the high school era again, and we talk about you were the type of guy that likes to you want to do a lot of work, but you kind of in the back you don't want eyes on you. So what was in high school? What were things that interested you? Us in here, we know football was something that you were heavily indulged in high school. What were some other things that just because you sang? You also were in the choir.
Yeah, I was in the choir in high school. Actually, middle school through high school. I've always enjoyed singing. It's just I'm more of a choir kind of guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll sing, you'll catch me singing, I know you're not supposed to be there kind of thing. But the worship here and the way it's unfolded just makes anybody who wants to go for it. I mean, there's no judging. You can be off key if you want. I mean, not that you're trying to be, just if it happens, no one cares.
And that's where it's beauty for me because I can't sing a lick, but yet, and nobody's judging you on a Sunday, and everybody's singing, excuse me, no matter what. So the worship inside home church is just angelic all the time, and it's beautiful to see on a Sunday that everybody's praising and lifting their hands and worshiping and stuff like that. So
yeah, I mean, growing up Methodist, I do miss some of the hymnals we used to sing. I mean, there are some good ones out there, mostly because of being in choir. It's like a very methodical way it goes, but I never worshipped like I do here, except for at happenings, because it's the same kind of feel at a happening. I mean, the same, just give it all to the Lord and let it go. That's just how we do it, and it's a magical thing.
Well, that's one of the things that we've been doing here at Youth is I realized by going to the happening, they didn't have, what do we have here, Pro Presenter. They didn't have any of that. They had an old projector screen with lyrics on it. And there wasn't a big stage. It wasn't grand. They had guy playing the guitar, and I think they may have had drum, like the
Box
little,
drum.
yeah,
Yeah,
box
box
drum.
drum. Yeah.
I'm not sure the correct names.
Um,
Where's Leonard when we need him?
Right.
Yeah.
But and even with the basics of basics, those kids were going hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane how hyped they were getting for Jesus, and I can't talk. It was beautiful to see. I mean,
And that's one thing that really the Lord was like, praise and worship. Like, so that's we've started doing. We come in here into the sanctuary and have a little devotion, and then I come back here and then play music through Spotify, and then slide words, and we do worship. And to know that you don't have to have technology because they didn't have technology, like it didn't really click to me until Clayton was talking about let God move. Like you don't have to have technology, and you begin to realize that back in the day they didn't have ProPresenter, they didn't have flat screen TVs, they didn't have, you had a hymn book. That was like technology at its prime back in the old Baptist church. The hymn book
For sure.
and the Bible behind the seat. And as a kid, that was so cool because you were for sure could kill an hour and a half if you had a Bible and a hymn book. If they just had a hymn book and you had to bring your own Bible, oh, church with Grandma and Grandpa was rough, boy. It was like, come on, let me out. But you talk about just how the happening brought you through. It was, yeah, you weren't living for Christ in high school, but at the same time, the happening helped you. It gave you a stepping stone to the next year, and to the next year, and to the next year. How many years now, and how many happenings have you been to?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know how many were done with the old program. It actually split apart, and there was a new switching over into the new form of happening. The same people who were running the old one are running the new one. They just had to put a new director in there because, or a board. Same thing that kind of what happened to Venture and Home Church, really, almost identically, really. But Mark and Lauren, great youth pastors out of I think Aurora Methodist. But I started 135 with the old program, and now they're on I think
we were at
30.
we were at 29.
29.
And
So this next one's
the next
30.
one will be 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, so it's 30 from the new program, and I think they went to like 180, I think, or 170 with the old program. I'm not 100% sure on that. Essentially, it's 3 a year they were doing. So I did at least 3 a year through high school. I didn't really come back as a college coordinator. That was about the time where I had to fight for myself as a Christian, and my wife fought for me. But as it progressed and as we got more closer to home church and that, I've been able to serve more again back with happening. So it's kind of funny how when the Lord knows you're not in the right spot, He won't offer you the place, and then as soon as He finds out, oh, you're working at it or you're trying, all right, here you go. And it's great to see the every stepping stone for the last 2 years just get put down week by week, honestly.
And I want to go back to Caitlin. So, were you and Caitlin friends or whatever back in high school in the happening days, or did that because she was
No, let me cut you off right there. Are you talking about Kaylin, his
or
wife,
Caitlin? Yeah, Caitlin.
or
sorry.
Caitlin, his sister?
No, I seen Caitlin, and then I was so it all. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
It's super confusing. All you got to take
Kaylin.
out is one letter.
Oh
So,
yeah, I made sure that I lived in a tongue twister my entire life.
Yeah.
Me and my wife. Sorry, you got me on the wrong
Yeah.
subject for a
It's
second.
easy. It's easy.
Me and my wife met, actually. She was an 8th grader. I was a freshman at a middle school sport football game. And either that or it might have been a senior game. It doesn't really matter. We met at a football game. And I was this trying to be up and coming jock, goofball, pick on the girl, trying to make them flirt with you, that kind of thing. Because again, you don't have any real skill at freshman year. And the biggest problem is it was me. I was selfish, always selfish through high school, and I think that's again probably one of the bigger problems. I always said, well, this hurt me, or this for what is my me dealing with my own personal stuff maybe. But so we dated in high school, but again, I was not ready to be in that position or even grown up enough to know what it was to be committed to anything. And that's something that I grew into. Thank goodness I did finally have a few more girlfriends in college that actually didn't have any real meaning in my life per se, but were able to have that fight for God because she wasn't even a Christian. And so I actually had that fire again in a way to have the arguments back and forth, but realized it wasn't going to be the right thing. And as soon as that ended, I knew who I was supposed to be with, and we somehow connected again due to God putting it right in the same. It's unexplainable. There shouldn't have been the way it worked. And I knew that she was the one and that I wasn't going to let her go again. and so, yeah, I kind of jokingly played hard to get for about 2 years just because I didn't want a very quick, engagement and then married. I liked the longer thing, kind of make it special in a way. But
yeah, playing the long game versus me
Hard
going
to get.
straight for it. So
being that it's all about me, I wanted it to be fun.
Well, and I was the same, a very selfish person, very, very selfish. And one of my things before I would open up and completely, I told Brooklyn I loved her, but before I really fell back in love with her, I wasn't going to open my heart up because, like I said, my mom and dad were married for 35 years. And they got divorced. 35 years, church-going family. I've been in church all my life. And that happens, and you just close it. I mean, I'm not, but I also had a number of things on top of that, cheated on, blah, 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 multiple times. So you just get to the point, you're like, okay, well, if this is what's going to happen to me, instead of realizing in that point in time, hey, maybe you should have quit trying to find women. That's why you didn't find a woman. But I did, and like you said, it shouldn't have happened, but the way it happened is amazing, and God was there. Whenever I see Jacob, and he's walking around here on a Sunday morning, smiles, he's always got another child, Nolan, something just enthralled. Whenever it comes to kids, what is it about them? Is it you want them to have what you had as a kid, and you want them to be loved, and where does that nourishing, is it, like I said, mine was from whenever my mom had in-home daycare, so they were just like a part of the family anyways. When did your compassion and your love for children really start? Has it always been there, or has it kicked off recently?
So my wife has the passion for kids, the patience, everything. I mean, immediately can pick up a screaming kid, doesn't even know the name, and straight calm. I have had this weird I'm not great with young kids, but like 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, I've been able to somehow keep them enthralled or something. And I wasn't, as again being me growing up in college age, and then really until the last 3-4 years, basically since Hannah and Nolan have come up, I was like, kids are cool, but like, it's nice to see, cool, I get to leave this situation kind of thing. But then Hannah and Nolan showed up, and it's great being an uncle. It's great having that connection and getting to see them learning, growing, and progressing. And I think that's probably what drives me more now, is to see growth in individuals. It could be the smallest minute thing, just day by day, knowing that there's something where they caught it, the spark, or that they know what they're doing, and the day before they didn't, or whatever like that. It's just, that's probably what keeps it going for me. And then, I've dealt with a lot of adult children in my life. We in our college ages, we opened up our home for a couple who one was struggling with addictions with heroin and was trying to get his life straight, and he had a girlfriend with a daughter, and they were having their second one on the way, and we had an extra room upstairs, and we weren't going to let them stay out in the cold. Second one was born on Christmas. We were there. We drove him to the hospital, that kind of thing. At least we got to do that for him. He ended up still failing with his fight on addiction, but at least we gave those two kids 2 years of a roof over their head where maybe they would have not had that had they tried to do it on their own. And now she's doing great. She has the two. She's actually, I think, getting engaged and married and has a house. And, I mean, Lord's blessed her with her life. And hopefully he can, I know he's still out there in Springfield, but we haven't been able to talk in a long time. But I hope he's doing all right.
So, whenever you said college, I want to go back to college.
Mm-hmm.
What did you go to college for? And where did you go?
I went to OTC to get my general education because, again, early 2000s, everybody was going just to go through high school. You got your free 2 years at OTC if you just went, did 50 hours community service, and showed up on time. Yeah. That's all you had to do, and it was like, all right, well, it's what you do, so I'm going to do that.
Right.
Got my associate's degree, so I did at least finish my general education. Transferred to Missouri State. I've always, self-doubt kind of makes you change majors like 12 times, and I wanted at one point in time to be architect or draftman in some kind of manufacturing industry, that kind of thing. When I was in high school playing sports, getting injured in football, spent a lot of time with the training staff, getting healed, and using the electric stim machine that makes your muscles go all crazy and all that. I just thought that might be something I wanted to do, but self-doubt and stuff like that, and sadly, people in your life who think they know what's better for you kind of put you down sometimes too. But decided on hospitality management because at the time I was doing Pizza Hut for 5 years, and I was on track to get a store and stuff like that, already a shift leader, and just figured that was easy, so I was going to go do that. But got halfway through 2 semesters and found out that really that degree is not a real degree. You don't need it to do at least a Pizza Hut GM, sadly, because they'll hire you within the company as long as you work out long enough for them. But always been told to be a teacher, starting to think about it, but then life moves on, and the world is the world it is, and you got to get a job, and you got to pay bills, and you gotta do what you're supposed to do.
Grow up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to.
Oh man, it's tough. It's definitely tough. But back to the high school. I mean, in high school, I did anything I could to just get out of school. I mean, if you did football, guess what? Sometimes you weren't in class. You did.
Yep. You got to leave early for those
track and
games.
field. There were some events where you left a whole day of school and weren't there, and guess what? You didn't get counted out since.
I was one of those ones that didn't need a school activity to not show up. I just didn't show up.
Exactly. And stuff like that. So I mean, I was always active, I guess, is why I'm always trying to be active in church too. Always doing something.
So what position did you play in football?
I was left tackle, and we actually did veer my senior year, so it was weird. You could alternate. I did both sides basically, but I was offensive tackle is what I played.
Yeah, we did that too, where we got to switch back and forth.
It was all running. All my entire senior year, I dropped 20 pounds through a season eating nothing but about 6,000 calories a day. It was insane. Wow. We ran all day, every day.
So now, was there ever any serious thought about, hey, I'll take this into college? Was this like a football could possibly be something, or was that ever a thought, or was it just something that you did because you enjoyed it?
I mean, if my senior year I tore my rotator cuff, I destroyed both ankles through the season. Getting rolled up on in the way the veer option went, you'd be the front blocker, and so all of a sudden you're in the middle of the tackled pile, and it's right up under your ankle, and it's sideways, and it hurts. And
Tape it up next play.
right, but
Yeah.
you're barely walking on it. So yeah, I mean, I did kind of. It was more like if they'd let me on the field, I'll totally do that. But as the injuries progressed senior year, it was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. They're not going to want me. I'm not going to want to deal with this, and then I'm not going to college or going to NFL, and all I'm doing is breaking my body down for 4 more years of something I enjoy doing as a pastime more than anything. But I mean, really, the hardest part of my life would have been senior year through college and now up to the 2 years prior, essentially 3.5 years prior to now. Senior year, you're graduating. It's supposed to be good times, but then when you're still full of self-doubt and you don't know what you're going to do, well, that's when the bad voices tell you all these things. And if you listen to them, you make more worse choices. And then you go off to college and you decide, well, parties are more fun than going to church. And then Pizza Hut had me working Sundays opening the store, so I wasn't going to church then. And the more you go away from church or the community, the easier it is to just stay there and to stay in the negatives and stay in the darkness, I guess. And alcohol had a lot to do with that. I mean, up till 25, all I did was drink. Worked as a door guy at a bar and stuff like that. Again, wife finally told me, look, you either need to stop or we're done. And the one blessing of my childhood that you were talking about how you were raised is my parents didn't fight meanly, but they fought passionately, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
They were very passionate on either end of their argument, and so that meant it was loud. I lived in a loud environment, and coming to my wife, who is in a very quiet environment, minus when her father and mother were actually fighting to the death almost, because they were divorced when she was 12 or 11, I believe, roughly, 10, 9, somewhere in there. But so she comes from a childhood where yelling is bad, and I come from a childhood where yelling is just you getting your point across.
Yeah.
But my parents told us from a young age, marriage is something you've agreed to with God, and you don't get out until death do us part means death do us part, no matter what. And I watched their love. I mean, that's probably they waited so long for kids, as it took 7 years for them to become an actual cohesive unit.
Yeah.
And I see that with us too. God gave me that distance out because for the first 5 years of my marriage, I mean, if we had a kid then, I hope not, but it would not have ended well.
Yeah.
I'm way better and more in the right place for that now than I ever could have been.
He was
then.
working some things out through you. Yeah.
For sure. Oh, he's beaten me like a dirty rug in the backyard for years. And it might not be him. It could be the devil on the other side just making it look that much worse.
Right.
But,
And that's the thing. Whenever you're a selfish person, just me speaking from experience, there's only one feeling better than joy, and that's self-loathing. And you can't get out of self-loathing because it's just like it almost charges your ego. It almost makes your ego feel better. Yeah, I do deserve that. I do deserve that, and I don't have it. And it just seems like whenever you get stuck in that pit of poor, pitiful me, it feels good. And so if you can't have happiness, you'd rather have this poor, pitiful me party, and you lose sight of everything.
And it's easier to justify
Yeah.
everything.
And
while
how
you're there.
how are you going to be able to take care of somebody if all you're worried about is yourself?
Right.
Oh, for sure.
And you said something that's one of the things, you were talking about the voices and, whether it was you were beat like a rug. Sometimes I think we beat ourselves up so bad, and then at the end of the day, God's like, bro, I didn't do nothing. Like,
Right?
what are you
Yeah.
talking about?
All I said was
You-
this one phrase.
Why
and
did
you
you-
took it and
Yeah.
went
Yeah.
this way with
Why
it.
did you didn't get me out of that speeding ticket? Well, don't speed. It's
Yeah.
simple.
Right.
You don't speed. You know, that's, you didn't get me out of that. You made the cop was mean and he, you were speeding. So it's such a refreshing feeling to see whenever somebody realizes, for me, shedding that skin and uh, really being able to look back on your life and be like, ooh, like, that's who I was. And then to realize that it wasn't you that did that it was God, and that the times whenever you thought you were getting beat like a rug and that things weren't going to happen your way and that things weren't going to go your way, and why me, why me, the more rug beatings you get, you begin to realize they're not rug beatings, they're lessons. And you keep getting beat because you're not learning from the lessons. So the lesson's going to continue. It's no different than a Mario game. If you can't pass the level, you can't go to the next one. So if you're not ready for the next level, why am I going? You're not ready. So, but enough on me and enough on that. What was it for you whenever you begin to realize, hey, I was selfish, and you begin to start seeing things in a new light, and you sleep better, you don't worry as much about, and you still have, don't get me wrong, you're still going to have your self-confidence. I get them every once in a while, these self-confidence kicks, but for the most part, you feel like you don't have blinders on anymore. Like, there were times where I was so selfish, and I wasn't paying attention to what's going on around me. I've heard people before, Sarah Converse made the comment about how I wasn't a talker. But the thing is I was just so selfish that now the peace and not hearing my own poor you, and hearing people talk and hearing the Lord and hearing all of this stuff, it brings a new light to your eyes. And you begin to realize that it's not about you, it's about others. And that these difficult times become easier. It's not like snap, they're done. Struggles, we all have them. What are some things that God has helped you with when it comes to selfishness? Because the first thing that a selfish person is going to say is, I'm not selfish. Well, I'm not selfish. I'm not, for somebody who is having a difficult time hearing the Lord, the thing is that the Lord's word doesn't change. When it comes to Scripture, it doesn't change. His ways aren't going to change. You said it yourself. You weren't ready. You weren't ready. God was ready. You weren't ready. So God wasn't going to open the floodgates until you were ready. Now that you're beginning to drop this old selfishness and all of this stuff, explain to those who maybe have the poor, pitiful me, or the this is too hard, or prayer is, man, this is really, I'm very busy right now. These are all things selfish people say. For a selfish person to take time out of their day to wake up early, to come to church, and to serve, what are pieces of advice that you would give to people who may be in a selfish mindset, who are in a mindset of, I haven't gotten because maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I haven't, because a selfish person, whether you want to believe it or not, things that go on through your head are, I'm not good enough. God didn't do these because of me. Me. To some people just don't, they hear these things and all of a sudden Scripture rolls off and you hear something like, here at Home Church, we want you to find Jesus, find purpose. Sometimes things can become cliche to a selfish person. What are pieces of advice that you would give somebody who's living a selfish life? Little steps that you took to just help you become willing and able to talk on the microphone in front of people, willing and able to get baptized in front of people on live TV, at a camera, in a church. What are steps and things and pieces of advice that God has worked through and helped mold you to help you drop that? Just explain to some people kind of what the Lord has done for you in that refining process and what you've helped find gets rid of that old selfish skin.
Well, so I think one thing that helped me, and I mean, it's not something that's easily done for anybody in this day and age, but I put my phone down a long time, like about a year ago. Like, I still look at it, but once you put it down and you're not obsessed with what it's trying to tell you, which is, again, just trying to please yourself, you start looking outward and you can then perceive the world differently, I think. Because when you're not paying attention to the person next to you, it's hard to know how they feel, or to even possibly talk to them, or anything for that matter. But on top of that, on the selfishness too, community. I mean, I'm still a selfish person when it comes down to it. I'd rather be at home taking a nap or anything, because you work a 9 to 5, and when you're not working, you're supposed to be giving it to the Lord, and it's like, but what about my time? It'll be there if you just wait.
Yep.
But it's all community. With community, you'll want to spend more time with them, and, well, where are they? There you go. Now you're serving, because you're spending time with people you want to spend time with. And then as you serve, it gets easier. It gets easier to get up. Now you can get up 2 hours before you're supposed to be at work, or 3 or 4 hours. Maybe now that you're up 3 or 4 hours, now you start reading the Bible in the morning. Okay, you're doing that. Now you start putting podcasts in there throughout the week. All right. You just keep building until you finally. You can't get complacent, though, because as soon as you get complacent, you'll immediately go back 2 steps.
You can't get complacent, but you also can't tear yourself down whenever you're going to be tired.
Mm-hmm.
And there are going to be times where, I know, for instance, Easter, you have practice on a Monday, and then if you're serving on Sunday, you have to come back in on Tuesday for practice. There are times where you give, and then there are times where the Lord allows you a break, and you're like, no, this is mine, I'm going to do everything, I'm going to make everything right, and then you burn yourself out. And then now, instead of being right in the middle, complacent with God, you're on 2 spectrums. You're burnt out, or you're upset because you're not serving enough. And it's like, look, here's what you have to realize. You can serve the church by just being here smiling on a Sunday. Just being a person that's welcoming and showing Jesus. You don't always have to be on the calendar serving to serve the Lord. And so I think you can go to 2 extremes if you're selfish. You can go to doing way too much because you feel bad because you need to make up for the lost times. So I'm going to do everything I can to make up for this, God. It's not a make-up game. God's going to take this in His time. It's slow and steady. Mm-hmm. It's like you just said. It starts off with this. Then it goes to this. Then it goes to this. Then the next thing you know, you're able to stand up in front of a crowd and talk and tell about your story. You're able to sit in a podcast and talk without any hesitation about what the Lord has done for you. Mm-hmm. That is, I love that you said that. You started off, you do this, then you do this, then this leads to this. Everybody wants to jump in head first and go 100 miles an hour, and you're going to blow an engine, and then you're going to be stranded, and you're going to blame God or you're going to blame the people, and that's dangerous.
It's just like Clayton always says, I mean, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I mean, it's 100%, excuse me, it's 100% about community. I mean, for me, the reason why I got, excuse me, good grief, so involved in serving all the time was because of the community. I mean, it was wanting to get to know, the other members of church better, wanting to find friends, or, just wanting to just develop my relationship with God even more. But, being at the church more by serving not only grows your relationship with God, but also with that community too, because you're serving with other people, and those friendships develop, and then, it just goes from there. It's crazy how that works.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is I'm not downplaying it. There are people that could serve every single day, 24 hours a day, never take a nap, and be happy. Some people are built different. I'm not built like that. I was a later model, or
earlier model,
or whichever it was. I wasn't built the year that they were built.
Breed of people. Yeah,
I was not. I'm I am more like a. I'm more like a. What's the word I want to use here? Not that at all is what I'm going to go with. But the that's the thing that people have to realize, though, is we're all so special. We're all so individual. Our relationships with God are individually different. I mean, how you talk to God and how I talk to God are completely different ways. How I talk to God and how somebody else may talk to God may be the same. That may reach. That may, you know, you help each other out in that way. We all have our own special things. But I think that that's one thing that people who I think are extremely selfish, you don't want, man, work's been tough this week. I really need to go to, just this extra 2 hours of sleep. I hate to miss out on church. It starts with whenever you feel that for the first time, you don't let the devil do that and you go. Right. Some people are dying from pneumonia and stuff, and they're like, no, the devil's trying to keep me from going to church. Lay down. Lay down. You need to lay down and rest.
Right. Yeah.
You lay down and rest. The devil's not, it's like, come on, so there's an extreme that you can go to, and it's very important to realize that before you redline. So, we will take just a short break here. Not a break, but we're going to pause for our not sponsors, but the locally grown family businesses that Home Church has produced.
I mean, it would be cool if they were sponsors, but I mean, I'm not.
Like a cup of tea.
You're right, yeah.
Like to give a shout out to the Winfield Beard and Riff. Man, running like crazy. It was so great to see them Easter weekend. Not great, just great to hear his voice, but just to talk to him, to hear his voice in that way, not just on the stage. So they're running like crazy. I know they're really busy this time of year.
Yeah.
He's going to be, if he's not going to be gone, she's going to be gone. They're gone together. So Beards and Riffs running like crazy right now. Love the products, you guys.
Yeah, they're going to be gone until, I think, the end of May, maybe possibly mid-June.
Mm-hmm. So big shout out to them and the wonderful products that they're slinging. Love you, Nathan. Love you, Sarah. I haven't met you, Wayne, but I love you. Keep doing you guys. Thank you so much for the wonderful products. I can't ever remember the name, but I just remember the person, Miss Sarah Converse. What's the name of her company?
Backwoods and Bare Feet with her chainsaw company.
Backwoods and Bare Feet. Wednesday night we were here, and thank you, Sarah and her husband, for joining the youth night. They're going to be a part of that, helping connect with the kids. They've got many years of experience doing that. But I know that was off track a little bit, but back to the subject. She was talking about she was working on an armadillo sculpture.
Right, yeah.
And I don't have social media, so I hadn't seen it. So that was the first time I'd really seen some of her work besides the Chiefs that you have in your house.
Yes,
now,
correct.
But some really cool looking chainsaw art. Check her stuff out if you guys haven't. Really cool stuff there. So I don't...
There's a bunch of other small businesses here in the church. I know Dana Morton has one with the essential oils. Kim's got one, I believe. I can't remember the name of it either, but she sells the lens cloths and a bunch of other stuff.
Chris Looney does
leather. Yeah. Chris Looney does leather work. I believe that's Arcane Leatherworks, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right.
And then the Joneses have all the tax services and stuff like that Natasha's doing now.
What a coincidence. It's tax season. Yay!
And then I believe Jessica Barton has one too that she does. And Jamie does some jewelry on the side too. And I know there's probably more that I'm missing, but we definitely have a bunch of small businesses here at church that if you have time, feel free to go check out. So.
I know we now have a thing on the podcast to where you can go to the Home Church link. You go to the Home Church link and you can subscribe to the podcast from the Home Church app, right?
Yes, yeah. So if you go onto the oh, what is it? The Church Center app. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. The Church Center app. Uh, Search for Home Church 417 if you haven't initially downloaded it. Find us, and then halfway down, I believe, on the home page, you can click on the link, and it'll take you to our YouTube channel, and you can subscribe there, or right above it, you can click on a link and fill out a form if you want to be on the podcast.
Ooh, we're big timing now. Reserve your spot now to be on the podcast. Yeah, I think that we're going to go back to the Jacob Woody story.
So
you got anything else?
No, I don't think
All
so.
right.
So, Jacob, we talked about, your early childhood, elementary, middle school, high school, and a little bit of college. I know from, being married to Caitlin, your sister, and hearing from you guys, over the past 6 years. But we're going to get a little deeper now, if that's okay with you. What was it like, let me think. What was it, 7, 8 years ago now that your dad passed away? And I know that was really rough for Caitlin and stuff like that. And, every story's different. And Caitlin remembers one thing a certain way that will stand out to her, and it will stand, something completely different will stand out to you. Because you guys remember everything differently and, aspects and stuff like that. But what was your faith like, and how'd you get through that? Because I know everybody deals with grief differently.
Well, definitely wasn't the right way, but your selfishness kind of makes you decide one path or the other. Do you join the sadness, or do you be the strong person for the people who are sad? Either way, being the selfish person, I say selfish. By selfish, I took my emotion out of it and was more looking outward in the sense of, what do I need to look like for the other people around me? Do I need to be the serious, okay with it, even though it's not okay, or do I need to be sad to be sad?
Right.
And it seemed like I boxed in everything. I mean, just deep in, get it down as far as possible kind of thing, stuff it down there. And definitely not the right way to do it. But
I hate to interrupt, but how old were you whenever it happened?
I was 23 or 24, I believe, 23. I believe it was 2016, 2017, October.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's sad that time's flown by, but at the same time, as you heal, it gets
It's a blessing.
It gets easier, I guess, and so it doesn't seem.
I don't know if I would say it's easier. You just learn to live with it.
And that's kind of what I'm meaning. But
Well, and that's the. I didn't mean it. It's a blessing. It's the Lord's way of helping.
of healing you
Yeah.
that way,
Yeah.
for
You be-
sure.
Instead of hurting so much,
Yeah.
you become more thankful for the time that you had, and the little things become, more prevalent and more meaningful.
I mean, a little backstory to it is, it was a little bit more of a blessing than most people who lose their parents at a younger age. 23 is not very old to be losing a parent by any means.
Right.
But my father did fight cancer most of my high school career, whether it was bladder cancer when we were in like middle school, 6th grade, or middle school through freshman year, and then prostate cancer was the later thing. The economy dropped at the end of 2010. He had just finished his first round of cancer, and then they got dropped from the business that he was working for. And so he didn't go back to get the double check to make sure nothing was going to come back. And then, as it progressed, things, I went hunting with my father the last year before he wasn't able to do it. And even then, that was not good. It was prostate cancer that metastasized to his brain. And so it almost seems like you have a middle ear infection, actually. That's how you react when that happens. Fun fact for you guys, if you get dizzy, lightheaded, and have no explanation besides a sinus infection, essentially, it could be something crazy. But besides the fact, so with him passing, it was mostly like, why did this happen? Because again, you're selfish, so you have to know why anything is the way it is, to make yourself feel better about it. But my sister had a worse time, I feel. And again, this is the adverse viewpoints.
Right.
She thinks I might have had it worse because I had to experience all of it, and I think she had it worse because she couldn't be there.
Right. Because at that time she was living in Arizona.
I got closure in some way, somehow, because I got to see him the whole week he was in the hospital before he did come home on hospice for the 2 days that he was home before passing. But his brothers and sisters got to see him in the hospital too when he was awake and able to communicate and experience that moment with them. But I was there for his passing. I mean, when I was with my father when he stopped breathing and took his last breath. And my sister was on the phone, Mom was there too, and the only reason I was there, because my mom was not telling me my father was passing away at that moment, was the pause when I asked, do I need to come home? And she paused and said no. And I said, I'll be there in 20 minutes. And I left work, definitely broke the law getting home, and got to be there before he passed away, thank goodness. The hindsight 2020, not a year later, my wife has to go to the hospital because her father's there for a splinter, believe it or not. He had a splinter doing landscaping and yard removal of some foliage or limbs that were down, and got a splinter in his arm, and it got sepsis, and he passed away within 3 days.
Wow.
Quickly. I mean, gone, done. The only blessing that that me and my wife have with that, and it, sadly, when bad things happen, you run with humor to try to make yourself feel better. He did take God. He did take Jesus Christ as his Savior, I think, like a month before this happened. A couple weeks to a month before this happened, and so the running joke is God just took him before he could mess it up on himself. He was always a Christian, but he was always fighting addiction too, and so he went in there and got saved, and then 3 weeks later was taken, or a few months at least later was taken. And the hindsight is why'd that happen a year later? That's why it happened, so that I could be there for my wife to help her through that. And then from that point forward, as if you pay attention, put your phone down, and don't look at yourself inwardly as much, you start seeing what God is doing outwardly.
Right.
I guess one of the biggest fights for some Christians out there, and I was one of them in high school, is you say you're supposed to feel God's presence. Well, if you shut up and look out there, you will. But if you're expecting it to be in your own life or for yourself, or like what it is internally, that's not how it works.
One of the things that I like too about Christianity is it's not a religion that you can skimp on.
No.
If you're going to be a Christian,
God
wants you to be at 100%. And anything that he asks of you isn't something that he wouldn't do for you. So it's understanding and realizing that you had to be there for somebody. Like, we're here for people. And when you realize that even though 89, 90 years sounds like a long time, we've got eternity. Like,
yes.
This is, as much as you want to write bumper stickers about it or whatever, this is only the beginning. Like, we're just beginning. You can be 100 years old and you're just beginning. Like, we're just in these beginning stages. So whenever a selfish person sees something, they want it then, they want it now. And it's like you said, when you put your phone down, when you have your phone, you're getting stuff what you want now. I'm getting information that I want now. I'm getting stuff I want now. Mm-hmm. Instead of setting it down and realizing you need to be there for somebody instead of being on a phone. To somebody that's selfish, you're like, oh, well, what are they? I'm there, like I'm there physically, like, we're in the same, what does it matter? Like, I don't get it. And
showing up is not enough.
And the thing is people get mad and they're like, why wasn't he? When you get so selfish, this isn't making an excuse for being selfish, but you don't realize common things that are foolish. You don't realize common dumb things. Common respect is another thing. It's not that you're doing it not on purpose. You're just not paying attention. Like, you're so focused on yourself, you're not paying attention. So I think sometimes that's another thing. I'm not making an excuse, but to have the patience to realize, okay, I've got to be here for somebody. This is going to take away from my time of what I want to do, but she needs me right now. That's cool to see that process, that whole, like I said, the shedding of that old skin, the death of the old body and new in Christ. It's just, people think that these things are going to happen overnight, and you can't get stuck in the mindset of overnight, changing overnight. You said it. We're still changing. You're still maturing. You're still growing. To you, whenever you look back on stuff like that, you look back on your father passing, and Caitlin said that, the good that came out of it was the families. The family is very tight now. They realized what they lost, how important family is. A lot of people don't, they feud. If somebody close to the family passes, then all of a sudden they're fighting over this and they're fighting over that. You guys, from the happening, you can tell, close-knit family. Marcy running the kitchen, everybody else filing in order. Your mom, were you there for her a lot, or what was in that whole time, what was your relationship with your mom like? Because obviously you guys are very, very close now. Is the very, very close now an aspect of losing your dad, or have you guys always been that close?
I mean, we've always had a loving family, a loving household. Mom is a doer. That's how she shows her love.
Mm-hmm.
Is she's going to do anything she can to make it easier for you, whether it's benefit or not. Sometimes, but
she
but
goes out of her way to do anything
but like
and everything.
that's her love language is
Yeah.
doing acts
Yep.
of service.
Yep.
And so, uh, it maybe it did. It's tough to say. I think it did a little bit, and in other ways, it just shored up our relationships together in a sense. We were always pretty tight knit. College kind of put me back farther. Plus, my mom and dad were trying to do what's right for me and not have me move in to a house with my wife now, thank goodness, and that went the right way, but it could have easily not.
Yeah.
And I see the biblical problem in that. I am now been saved and rescued from that. But what I was saying is they didn't want me to move in. So for the first 6 months, I didn't talk to my parents. It was the kind of, again, being selfish. I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
I know what I can do and that. But after that, when the relationship came back, it was me and my dad learning life lessons and growth as an adult of, all right, now I'll show you what it really means to be an adult and stuff like that. Mom's always been a doer. It's easier than to have to talk, I guess. Just to do stuff is easier than talking. Same as me, doing stuff's easier than
Right,
talking.
yeah.
But for my mother, it's tough because, again, I think we're almost identical in some of the ways we handle stuff. She clammed up too. We were there to make sure everybody else got their goodbye, and that was what we were doing. That was the goal. That was the plan. Try to do it as right by my father as I could and go from there. But it's definitely something I know, I get told all the time that I remind all of the people who've ever met my father, Brad, that whether it's my voice or the way I put a phrase together or just any of it, I remind them a lot. And so it's nice to see that I can do that, at least in the times that my mom misses him.
Yeah. And I can, just from never meeting Brad, I can see it from just the recordings that Caitlin has on her phone. I mean, here lately she moved over to my plan on our cell phone carrier, and I had to transfer all the videos and text messages and stuff over for her. So I got a chance to go through all of that and kind of listen to your dad and get to know him a little bit better just through, you know, recordings and videos and stuff like that. And I can see it that, you know, you're a lot like your dad just through those. But
That's a big blessing, actually, because I did not get a lot of video or voice recordings because she was in Arizona, so he was messaging her every day, like letter format and text messages, "Dear Caitlin," and like it was really cool.
yeah,
My dad's thought process and like "Love Dad" at the very end, like
Yeah.
letter format in text messages is great to read. It's hilarious, but like that was just my dad's style. So yeah, it's. I'm so happy that she got that.
Yeah.
For sure.
and there was a brief moment where she thought she lost everything while we were transferring over everything, and it just crushed her for all of like 5 minutes. And I'm like, "Don't worry, I got this." And then, you know, was able to reboot her phone, and thankfully, thank God, got everything to upload.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
She would have never let you live that one
no,
down, man.
I probably would have died that day, but but luckily we got everything. But I think the way me and you can relate from on that and why we bonded so quickly was, you know, I lost Afton, my sister, and we both handled it the same way. We kind of just stonewalled, got to be, you know, tough for everybody, and it was hard for me because I put up that stone wall. I got to be tough for mom and dad. You know, I got to make sure, you know, everybody's okay. You know, serve, you know, and not feel anything. So it was, I think, like a year later when my parents finally came to me and they're like, "It's okay not to be okay. You know, you're allowed to feel things." And at that point, that's when, you know, completely lost it. I'm like, you know, I got to do something. And that's, you know, a week later I moved to Tennessee. So, yeah.
That's awesome that your mom and dad did tell you that, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's big, really.
What? Because I've been fortunate enough to not lose somebody like obviously my grandpa. Me and him were really close, but barely have. I mean, I have memories, and obviously, but like it's not like. So to lose somebody that close, I haven't had to deal with that. Whenever both of you, anytime that it comes to talking about it, I know we've talked about it whenever you wore the purple today.
Right.
It's easy for us to fall back and when it comes to a memory, and people want to bring up scripture like in the Old Testament, Lot's wife. She looked back. You know, you're looking back. You're not supposed to look back on memories. Memories, you can. It's there's two ways you can cling to a memory.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good memory, or you latch onto it. The good old days. This is better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, oh, I missed it. No, not that kind of looking back, but looking back on the memories that you have of them, and then what's going on currently now, like life now. If that person were still here, we're just gonna. What is it that you would want them to say about the last time they saw you? I want to ask both of you that. Well, if they were to come back and they were to see you right here, right now, in this church booth, talking about the Lord, what is something that you yourselves would say that they would see a change in and be happy?
I mean, I don't know if you want to go first, Jacob, but I mean, touching on the memory part, it took me a fat minute to realize that there's a difference between remembering and dwelling.
Yep.
So I used to dwell on all the time. Like, you know, she was a straight A student, you know, had a 4.0, working 80 hours, you know, working 2 full-time jobs at the C of O. God, why'd you take her? You know, here I am dropping out of college and, you know, barely maintained a 2.0 average and dropped out of college, stuck at a dead-end job. God, why her? You know? So, finally figuring that out, it's okay to remember, but it's not okay to dwell, was a huge thing for me. But then going to your question about what would they say now looking at us, I firmly believe Afton would be like, see, I told you. You know, you just got to trust God. And I told you he had a plan for you. You just had to put your faith in him and, fully believe in him. Good things were coming your way. You just had to believe.
Mine's kind of more of a joke, like, who's this guy? Because I'm tenfold different than I was when he passed.
Right.
By far, it would be, who's this person? And one thing I don't want to say dwell on, but the one I take with me every day is, good or bad day, I know that he's there and he does see our progress,
Yeah.
And he can see anything and all things up there waiting. And so, you joke like, who is this guy? But I hope that I'm proud of me or whatever.
Right.
I have more questions for him, I think, than he has for me.
Yeah.
The reason that I asked that, though, is I think that we get caught up in wanting to that exact aspect is, if they were to come back, what would they think of me? Like, what would they, about what I have done, what good I have done, about this and this. And it took you guys a minute to answer that question. Like, it's not like it took a long time, but it took a minute, because my point behind that was, you're not dwelling on that anymore. You know where they're at. You know they're safe. You know you're good here. You know God's got you here. So it took you a minute to answer that. So when it's fresh, it hurts. It's like I said, I haven't lost anybody that close. But to realize that you're in a place now where you no longer linger on that, it's no longer painful. I'm not saying you would not want to have them here at all. But the fact that it took you a minute, you're not dwelling on that anymore. It's not like, oh, well, if they walked in right now, I would ask this and this. I hope they would say this and this, and whenever I did this. So you're not letting it affect you. The devil's he doesn't have a stronghold on that part of your thinking anymore, if you know what I mean. That selfishness.
Yeah.
That selfishness. So it's no longer about you. You know where they're at. You're confident that God has put them where he said he was going to put them. You're confident that God has got you where you need to be, and he's with you. So that's just something that...
I mean, don't get me wrong. I would 100% take Afton for one more day. 100%.
Exactly.
And, I mean, I would love to meet Brad. 100%. I think just from the stories and everything that you guys have told me, that we would probably get along really, really well. And he would probably laugh at me for flipping over backwards in his chair and all kinds of fun stuff. And, all that fun stuff. But, 100% would take them back for a day. Would I bring them back permanently?
No.
Not at all. I know they're where they're at, and they're way better off. And Afton's probably up there singing show tunes and cooking with Grandma and all that fun stuff. And running with the dogs that we lost over the years. Would I bring her back? Nah. Am I excited to go see her one day? You better believe it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And that is something that, whenever it's fresh, we talk about steps it takes from a selfish person. It takes daily steps to grow out of that selfishness. It takes daily steps for those wounds to heal. So for us talking to somebody who this happened last week, it's easy for us to say this, and I hate to play both sides of but you have to, people don't seem to understand the importance of what people have gone through and how it affects them. And so that's what I love about you sharing your story, how it affects you, how it affects Zach, because it's not one way that it affects anybody. It's not just one simple way. It's always different. It's always going to be different. Mm-hmm. And it takes that time. It takes healing. And that, like our podcast and like our Reverend on Sunday, takes time, baby. You got to simmer it. You got to let it cook. You got to let it get real. And then you're ready. And then you can, but everybody wants that, like you said, when you go to the happening, you go to that weekend, and they very much wanted to emphasize this. You go there, you feel God Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, you're feeling good. Tuesday, it starts to wear off. Wednesday, you're tired, and then you begin to battle with yourself. Well, I'm not a good Christian if I don't go to good church. That's what the devil's telling you. And you're like, well, what? I'm just not a good Christian. And then you just drop it until the next happening comes along. So the importance of whenever you reach the highs is understanding that you're going to have lows, but realizing that you can take what was up with you in the high down with you in the low, which is God. So the happenings for that high and low, whenever me as an adult, I think probably had more respect for God and more respect for that time of worship, seeing those kids worship, but that moved me. I mean, like, I've seen grown people worship, and it's a different seeing a kid.
Oh, it's a whole nother level. Yeah.
That high and that low and that high and that low, whenever you're in high school, whenever you've got all of these other things going on, your advice for, because you've been to the happening, you know the highs, you know the struggles when you're in high school. Like I said, the highs of the happening happen, and to help stay with and to help maintain after the happening, what is advice that you would give not just the kids, because it can happen to adults too? What is some advice? I know the happening is a youth event, but this can two-way as an adult too. Whenever you reach that high, whenever you get that pinnacle and you see those students worshiping and it tugs at your heartstrings and it moves you, and then the Lord moves you, and then work comes on Wednesday and you're tired, what are things, pieces of advice that you would give to somebody who that is, because it's a struggle for all of us, but especially whenever you do have selfish tendencies, to get into a good routine? How did you deal with the highs? And then obviously, like you said, you weren't close to the Lord throughout high school, so obviously not very well there, but now the highs and the lows, the highs and the lows. What's advice that you would give people who may get down on themselves whenever they're feeling those lows?
It sounds crazy, but for me, it's keeping God in the point. Whether it's a low or a high, it's either God teaching you something, whether it's pushing your boundaries, or so like the biggest defining moment for last Sunday was at the very end, right before I got baptized, and Pastor Clayton said, and I can't remember the entire snippet of it, but essentially was, stop doubting what you've agreed to already. Essentially is the gist, which is, you've done it once, which I had already been baptized. I didn't necessarily need this one per se, technically, for confirmation of faith, right? But the doubt and the devil in the back of my head saying, you're not good enough, you're never going to be good enough, you can never prove your worth, went away right before then because of how he worded it. And it has been this whole week gone. I know next week could be different, but I'm thanking God and I'm relying on that viewpoint of, because God, all things can happen, whether good or bad. It's because God allowed it, and it might not be what you wanted, but it's for a reason, and it can end up in a better position. Like losing my father and losing her father. If I couldn't have lost mine first, how would I have been able to react to that? Well, wouldn't have. If Caitlin wouldn't have lost Brad, and how would you guys have been able to relate?
Right.
Like, it's just crazy. That shouldn't work that way. You call it coincidence, but there's no coincidence anymore. Yeah. It's all because of God.
It's crazy how he can take something that seems that negative and that much pain and work it out for something so great. I mean, losing, Afton, and then you guys losing Brad, I think was what was able to have all of us connect so fast. I mean,
true.
That we could relate on that pain and that loss and losing somebody that close. Not only just on that, but the aspect of, family was such a huge aspect for both families.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I grew up and family was everything. And same thing with you guys. I mean, I think that's why I fit in so perfectly with you guys, and vice versa. Caitlin fits in so well with my family. we would. It's kind of like ride or die. I mean, I would do anything for you guys, and vice versa. You guys would do anything for me. So
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know where
I lost it for a second. I had something and it just went right out as soon as you stopped talking.
So one thing that that is near to my heart, and the reason that we wanted to really start this podcast up more than anything was so, like we said at the beginning of it, people know other people's stories. People hear other people's side of what they went through. If you can relate, if not, then it's just a good story.
Mhm.
We're kind of coming to a close here. I'm not closing it yet. I just wanted to, if in a recap, because I know I've strayed us off back and in and back and in and back.
And I'm not very good at staying on topic.
Because I do kind of want to free talk for a little bit at the end of this, just about just free talking in general. But to recap for everybody, just let them know what God has done for you from. We talked about your younger years. We talked about college. We talked about high school.
Mm.
Just a quick recap of what God has done for you and who and what all He has blessed you with, because that's your testimony. Like I said at the beginning, and it's our job to give our testimony, our reason of hope. Your testimony in one, not hour and however long we've been going story, just in one quick, if you had to sum your experience with Christ up to a group of children or to a group of people right now, let's hear.
God will always love you, and He never forgets you. It's love. I mean, that's the one thing that testimony is for me. Because of God's love, I've been able to continually progress and get better and better and better every day, every week. Some weeks are slower progress, some weeks are better, but God's love is what made that possible. And grace, so much grace, more grace than you can fathom. That's my testimony, is just the amount of grace and love I've been given by the church my whole life, I think, mostly. There was one little snippet we didn't get to quite get to, was with the whole rug beatings and all that and the learning curves. If you open up to God and things don't make sense, it's because He's teaching you. You're currently in the lesson, and once you finish it, then it makes sense. It's never told the instructions and then do the problem. It's, oh, you figured it out. Good job. This is what you learned. But, you wanted patience. You wanted to not be selfish. Well, having to be there for someone else forces you to do that. And then, a few years later, you kind of forgot about that lesson. Well, then my wife gets in the car accident, and her back gets broken in the middle of her, right in the middle of her spine. It's like any lower, and she might have been completely paralyzed from the neck down, and any lower, and it would have been definitely half of her body. It was right in the right spot where somehow she managed to just break it straight through, and nothing moved, and she didn't lose any capabilities at all. But I went from relying on her to pretty much do anything and everything for me, because I'm selfish, to you're going to be doing everything and anything for her, and get used to it. Did it.
When do you remember that thought? Do you remember that, knowing why I'm going through this? Like, you just made the comment of you don't know when the lesson's over until it's over. That was a big thing. That's a big thing. Somebody breaking their back, that's a big thing. When was it? Was it like a recent thing where you were like, man, God, I didn't think about it? Because, like you said, it is a selfish person at the time. That seems like, man, come on, like, really, this is cutting into my time.
Well, it goes the other way. It's like, well, now it's my time to shine, and I'm going to look good.
Okay.
It's the same concept, but it's like
still selfish.
Being selfish for selfish reasons.
Okay.
I'm going to. I know I need to do this, but I'm going to do it because it's going to make me feel
Yes.
like I'm doing something.
Mm.
Not
Yeah.
because I need to just do it. And I
Okay.
love her and I'm going to do it. And I love her to death and I would do it all the time, anytime. But we're talking, she had to use a walker. And like she could walk, but it took a while for her to be able to just walk all normal with no brace on and the restroom visits and stuff like that. You just kind of, God was molding me to be a father, to be a caregiver, and to be able to take care of something other than myself. And that was a blessing in disguise in some time of my life where it probably could have been gone the other direction. But I also have, since in the last 7 years, 8 years, I have always been trying to look back at a certain aspect, whether I completely react to it the wrong way in the moment, completely take my emotions and let them run with it, whatever. What did God try to teach me? What is the God moment? And what can I center myself back to? And typically, even when I wasn't at my best or it didn't go the way I wanted it to go, there it is. There's the moment of why it went that way. We right after Dad passed away, we had a happening. I actually got called to work, and we were in, I think it was PM team, and it was a rowdy group of boys just like we had, same problems. But this one boy, his mom had a boyfriend, and he was the only male figure in this boy's life that was good. His father left him at a young age. Every boyfriend, it's just an in and out kind of scenario, but this one was trying to do right for the boy in any way he could. And they could not make things work in their relationship, and the boy was losing it, like straight losing it. And it was I had no idea what I was saying. I tried to help him out, and it's like, he's still going to be there for you, and it's like, I don't know what to really tell you. And it's like, I tried to pray, and like, I know I butchered the heck out of that whole conversation, but in the end, I'm hoping whatever I said was impactful in some way to him, to help him with that moment in life, like, call him, text him. If he's hanging out with you now, he'll hang out with you after, if he's that kind of guy. Like, not much, but it's what you can do,
Yeah. Yep. Whenever the happening, we talked, like I said, we were going to scatter it throughout. What's the word? Are you going to be volunteering in the next one, or is it?
So the happenings are kind of interesting. There's a lot of speaking and moving that happens in them day to day. So typically what happens once you're outside of the like student workforce is it's whether you're called upon it or not. And it's just you'll find that anytime you're asked, you should say yes because you're needed that weekend. If you're not asked, well, God needs someone else that weekend, and you just got to get over yourself, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But for sure, it's planned out enough that I don't think we will work unless something happens and we're asked to.
Yeah.
They know any adult that's working is going to say yes if they're asked to work, and so it's not really poignant on who's going to be the adult workers as much.
So this is kind of where we're going to break off into Jacob Woody, the outside of the church, Jacob Woody, the Jeep Jacob Woody. That's what I want to talk about now is the Jeep. What is your passion and love with the Jeep? Is it because it's like you, it's ornery and it's stubborn, or what is it? Because the first time I'm pretty sure that I seen you it was probably like -20 out, and you come rolling up in the Jeep, and I'm like, how is this man not freezing to death? The Jeep. What's the story behind the Jeep?
Oh man, it's a longer story of I'm stubborn and don't know when to say I don't need to throw more money at something. But was the first time I basically remember that I got the Jeep, and the first thing I did with it was I just learned to drive a manual. I didn't even have it tagged yet, and I drove it up to the outwoods or backwoods
Backwoods,
golf
yeah.
in
Yep.
Republic because
Yep.
I was like, oh, I can take back roads. I'm just gonna drive it. Who cares if I kind of
And-
breaking laws and whatnot?
I remember it was a young adult event, and you killed it so many times trying to just leave the parking lot.
Dude, it was my first manual, man. I don't know why. I just
And
wanted
he was
to learn.
smiling ear to ear, man. And he was just like, I got a Jeep.
Yep. It started with an actual hand-me-down Jeep. Being married, or basically marriage, and your significant other, you quickly learn that you're not the priority in that relationship, or at least you might be jointly priority side by side, but there is the other person you need to look at. And so cars come up. You need a new car. Guess who's getting the new car? It ain't gonna be me. It's gonna be the wife who needs a new car. But so she had a Jeep Liberty. We got her a brand new to her car, Ford Focus, and so I got the hand-me-down Jeep. I was working at Chrysler, Kia at the time, Youngblood, and so I could get Jeep parts cheaper. So a lift kit gets ordered. Immediately slaps that on, put 31s on it, took it to the Southern Missouri Off-Road Park out here in Seymour, Missouri, and went there 2 or 3 times. Never got stuck enough to break anything, and so I thought, let's just get a more efficient vehicle for it. Ended up getting rid of that Liberty, and then I ended up on a gamble buying a Kia off of our back lot that had a blown engine, and God blessed me with it having to have the Kia recall, and I got a long block for free. And then I took my faith and said, I'm going to turn this perfectly reliable car into an unreliable Jeep. And my wife said, okay. Sold the Kia, got the Jeep, and went to S'more, off-roaded it the one time, and
He's just been sending it ever since.
ever since. Wanted to make it a road trip kind of off-road vehicle, so I wasn't afraid to do stuff like drive it 2 hours to Oklahoma, and went to the off-road park out there in Grand Lake. Got it up to about a mile away from home and blew the rear end out of the axle, the pinion on it, and then did a re-gear on it. And just keep adding more and more money to it until it runs right, I guess. It runs fine. It's just me picking on it.
It's going to either run right or it's going to go...
Or it's going to go down the hill on its side.
Very expensive lawn ornament.
It's something that I'm not quite a thrill seeker, but Nathan, you got tattoos, and I mean, you get your tattoo, and it's like an experience of that anxiety or whatever, that raise, and then the release of it being done, and so it's an adrenaline rush, but it's not the adrenaline that I like, it's when it's over. That's the fun part. And I got home and I succeeded and everything went right and I didn't break apart or got to now tear it down and have it sit on jack stands for 6 months. That's what hurts. Driving is the greatest thing of its life when it's sitting on jack stands when you're just hurting. But it is something I'd like to get us all to go. That'd be awesome. I had to get a couple more Jeeps. We have a couple people in our congregation that have Jeeps. I don't know how willing they are to go off-road them.
I don't know. JB's Jeep looks like it, he'd be a little mad if we even got mud on the tires. So.
Well, the fun fact...
Bro, that bad boy ain't meant for off-road. I've seen that thing do 120 on the highway. That Jeep ain't meant for off-road.
Oh, yeah, dude.
The man behind the wheel on that has a point and a purpose, and he is going to get there.
That is very true.
Love you, JB.
Love you, JB. Yeah, I remember when we went to the camp in Arkansas and he got stuck turning around on the dirt road.
Yep.
But he did jump it over like a ditch. Like it was off cambered a little bit and it was muddy. He ended up putting it in 4-wheel drive just to get it back over that little rock pile. Oh boy. We do have a few Jeep owners though, for sure. It would be cool to get you guys to all go.
Yeah, I think Winfield sold his though.
Yeah.
He did. He wants another one. And he would have had that Gladiator if it could actually tow the camper.
That's true. Yep. That's the whole reason why he got his truck.
Right. And it's one thing. When I first went, the first trip I went to S'more, we actually went with Youngblood Motor Group. We took stock Wranglers out there.
Nice.
You can do it. in a stock vehicle.
A little more sketchy. but
Oh, I
good.
mean, you're dragging belly pans, but that's why there's metal there. There's protection there. You're
Yeah.
fine. I mean, there are trails that aren't that bad. It's kind of cool. You can do a couple. I wish I had the map. We have actually, for Jeep owners, there is this Trail Hero, I think is what it's called, and it's an app you can download. And there are 2 trails at S'more that you can do in your Jeep, and you'll get a decal sent to you, and you can put it on your Jeep, and it says you've done that trail.
Is that the sticker thing that I sent you
That
in the picture?
Yes.
Nice.
We
Yeah.
have Pee Wee's Crossing, and I'm not sure I can't remember what the other one was. There's a harder trail, but Pee Wee's Crossing is the creek crossing that goes straight across the whole property. It's about 900 acres, 1,000 acres roughly. Of off-road park, and then Pee Wee's Crossing's the little creek run, and it runs just the whole length, and you can go all the way down to the end and come back. It's a pretty flat creek, just a couple rock boulders in there, and 3 waterfalls, but they're real easy to get down.
That's cool.
How often do you do that? I mean, is that something that you?
It's something I would love to do every weekend. It is a costly hobby for sure. It's $30, $40 to get in as a driver. It's $50 total as a driver and passenger combo with vehicle. You can be there for the weekend and or for the day, and then you can run as long as you want and then go home. Anybody can go up there any time of the week. They do have you can go on their website. They have blockout days, and it's not just Jeeps. We see full built rigs all the way down to UTVs, and I don't think they allow 4-wheelers just because they want a cage, but UTVs are pretty popular coming down there now.
I haven't seen a 4-wheeler in a hot minute. I mean, it seems like the side-by-sides took over, and obviously I've seen 4. I just talking about like there for a while 4-wheelers were big, and then you kind of don't hear about
And then
them
it kinda died off,
side-by-side.
Or the spiders.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of
Yeah.
them lately.
Mm-hmm.
Then I came home last night, and that dude's souped up a dirt bike. He had turn signals on it and everything.
Is that the one that goes shooting through your neighborhood
Like a
every 30
supermoto?
minutes?
I think they call them supermotos, actually.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
It looks like a dirt bike, but it's got
straight
straight
up
tires
looked
on
like
it.
a Kawasaki like 750, just ripping it.
Oh, he probably was.
So I don't know.
We should get a
But-
Grom gang together, guys.
But no, that's not the one. It was over on Kansas Expressway. He was just sending it full speed down Kansas. So it was crazy.
What is it that is it? So I guess you just explained it. You said it is the I did that. It's not a thrill rush.
It's the conquering.
It's the conquering of
the
that.
objective, yeah.
So what is like in the Jeep community? What is the biggest accomplishment for your Jeep? Was it
What
the
is your
bumper
guys'
sticker?
Mount
Was it
Everest?
the
Yeah.
bumper sticker that you got? What's been your biggest thrill to say that you've conquered? Is my question, I guess.
Honestly, the biggest thing is no one takes their off-roading rig and drives it down the highway
No,
2 hours to another off-road park.
nobody.
Unless they're like overlanding and they're not actually wheeling the vehicle. They're driving down a dirt road and there are potholes in the dirt road and they're camping, but it's in either a campsite or a national park that's built for that.
And nobody is driving back roads up to El Dorado Spring.
Oh yeah,
to
in the
go to
40s.
this
With no windows in the
with
Jeep.
no
Yeah.
windows.
You just, it's something about not having AC that you just make sure you have enough wind conditioning you instead.
You enjoy the cool while you can.
Well, yeah, that was me pushing to the bare bones how long I could run a summer top until I needed a winter top. And I think it was, 2 days after I got my top snow fell in Springfield, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
I think it was something like that. Yeah.
I pushed it to the last second.
What kind of gas mileage do you get?
It depends. Honestly, average is about 16. At one point before I had some mechanical issues on the Jeep, it was having a weird leaning out issue. The ECM kept leaning out the fuel pump until I was getting like 20 miles to the gallon. And that's not normal in a straight six pre-real fuel efficienting like mechanic. They didn't care about fuel
Yeah.
efficientness back then. But
That the other day at work that we had one of those Ford Excursion, like the boat of a vehicle, and I was like,
Yeah.
this. It was a '99 or '97, and I was like, this is when America was like, no, thank you, we don't care about your gas mileage.
Yeah, we don't care.
We prefer getting 4 miles to the gallon.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. You still loving it up there, man?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely different. I mean, going from factory work, the same thing. That's what I was kind of telling Clay the other day. Like, it's weird because I used to do what I used to do basically was prep a unit before it would go out onto a truck full of sheets of paper for Amazon to make boxes out of.
Right.
That's what I did. So we would average 2,000 units a day. So 2,000 times a day, I was checking to make sure that the paper was stick together, put a tag in it with its number amount, check it over, make sure it was good, send it down the line, send it down the line, send it down the line. So you do that 2,000 times a day. Well, now I'm writing a ticket for a vehicle that is nothing like the last vehicle I wrote a ticket on. I think there's a belt on it. Oh, this is a belt driven. This is a Fiat. They ride off a chain. So you're going to need a chain. It's just crazy how all vehicles run down the road, but there is not one company, it seems like, that has the same thing as everybody else. You can't just universally use a 5 lug. Like, come on, what are we doing here? 3 lug. Like, 3 lug? You're going to put 3 lugs on something? And I'm like, that's not even an option. From what I just...
Oh yeah, and being in a um, third party shop is what we call you in the dealership world. It's a little bit different for you. In a dealership realm, you'll actually notice there's a lot of similarities in a lot of manufacturers, especially in the new lines. Like, for example, Mitsubishi, Nissan, and Toyota all have the mid-size or upper mid-size SUV, third row. They're the same body. All 3 cars run the exact same body, same mechanics, same engine, same everything.
Yeah, we worked on a Saab. I think it was a Saab, and it's basically a GMC Envoy and a
Yep.
Trailblazer,
Yep.
just with a Saab emblem.
Yep. It isn't the goofiest stuff
Yeah.
sometimes.
And the funny thing is I didn't realize how big a pain VW is. Like, their stuff is... I thought they were like a pretty well put together... Ooh, not here in Springfield. VW is...
They're well engineered is the term we like to use. Well German engineered. What that really means
That sounds
is
like it's custom.
they are super simple to figure out what's wrong with them and almost impossible to fix what's wrong with
Yeah.
them. You'll know what's wrong with them, but you need 3 special tools and about 12 hours worth of labor to get to the part.
What was it that brought you to... I mean, obviously mine was... I was burnt out with what I was doing, and I knew I wasn't called to do that, so change of scenery and just...
Honestly, that would be kind of one of those blessings from God in a
Yeah.
sense. Because, like, I got out of Pizza Hut and started at Youngblood. I ended up working there for roughly... so, yeah, I went from there from Pizza Hut to Youngblood. I worked there for almost a year, like 8-9 months. During that time, Dad got sick, passed away. They let me off during that time. I was able to at least spend the time I could with him, and when I came back, I came back. It was a blessing. My dad passed away, and I remember the one thing the day I got laid off from Youngblood was, my dad would have just said it's just a stupid job. Go find another one.
Yeah.
Like, that made me feel better about it. But, like, it was my first adult job in the world, and it's like, well, now what do? You didn't even get a year in. Humbugged around for a few months, helping my other brother-in-law, my wife's sister's husband at the time, get a business up and running, or try to. And then I ended up filling out an application when that went its course to Napleton Auto Works and a call center, because I did telemarketing when I first got out into the workforce. Of course, telemarketers, you got the job immediately just filling out the application.
We need a warm body.
And, like, I was sitting there going, well, I guess, at that time I was trying to start listening to God, honestly. And that was only 5-6 years ago. And so it was like, well, maybe if it's not there, it's not there. I got to take this other job. I have to start bringing money in. And so I went to my first day at the telemarketing firm, And I got a call on lunch from Jamie saying, "Hey, you want the job interview?" And I was like, "Yep." And I called the guy that I was at you go into the first day, you're just being told how it's going to work, and so like, you got these many calls, all that. You're not even done the training of what you're selling or anything yet. But it was like, I'm not coming back from lunch. Thank goodness they called me, because you're doing it because you have to, not because you want to. And parts is fit well with me because of the way I logically think in life. I mean, it's very oriented towards having these certain processes and stuff like that. So it's really easy to get behind because it's step by step. This is how it works, and if you don't do it this way, it won't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a blessing getting in there, and then it was a better raise than I had when I worked with Youngblood, more money than I ever could have made with Youngblood until years down the road with them, because they were very much a penny by a penny at a time kind of thing. Then Kaylin broke her back, and then I got a crazy raise that been working for. And I mean, it was interesting. You get a job. I started off I was in the interview, and my manager was telling me how we pull roughly $50,000 in a month as a parts department. That is nothing in comparison to most dealerships. I know we don't want to talk about money, but in dealerships, that's nothing. You're not making any money at that price amount. And
Well, that's one vehicle.
Right.
Selling one vehicle.
Correct.
That's like selling a vehicle a month.
Correct. And like, so it went from that. I got on the job immediately. Our business went from, we were supposed to do 55 a year to I was doing 70, 90. We already doubled it in the first 3 months I worked there. And then you're like, you get kind of that complacency, like, well, I deserve more. I'm doing more. And patience. And then now you're gifted that kind of thing if you actually wait it out. But yeah, parts is just where I fit in. I can work on cars. I don't like working on cars, which I think you end up realizing most mechanics love what they do but don't want to do it all the time.
It's more of started out as a hobby, and then now they get paid to do it.
Right.
So they're kind of like, oh crap, I'm going to fix another car.
Well, it's rough. I mean, what are you going to do? Mechanics have it rough. They're believed to be undereducated. They have more education than most people who are doing average work. Because do you know how to work on a car? I sure barely. I mean, I understand the step-by-step, pull this bolt out, that kind of
thing.
But you don't know what you're doing. You just know that you hope it comes out right at the end, right?
Yeah, I barely know how to change my oil, let alone something else.
Right.
Trying to change an engine block or something like that.
One of my favorite people, I know Clay doesn't sound like he talks a lot, here at church. But working with Clay, I've really gotten to watch him, and he said something the other day that really, I asked him, he was taking apart, I want to say it was a VW Bug, and he was just so meticulous with everything, laying it down in order and stuff. And I asked him, I was like, what is it that you like about, why a mechanic? And he goes, I like the fact that it doesn't run when it comes in, and when it comes out, it's running. I like that. It makes me feel like I've accomplished something. And to me, that seems like a hassle, taking all those bolts and all that stuff out. He loves, just to see, God has blessed Clay. He is a very good mechanic, and I know he'd roll his eyes or whatever and stuff, but to see, you made the comment about how intelligent they are and how they're just perceived to be dumb. Clay, the way to hear him explain, well, this doesn't work, but here's the problem. This doesn't work, but this runs off of this, and this runs off of this. So it could be these things, but this main thing right here isn't working. So we'd have to get this fixed before we could find out if it's one of these. And I'd hate to put that much money into it, so let's put money into this and figure this out so we're not wasting their time. And it's like, oh, I think we just charge the battery. I don't know. I'd have hooked up the cables to the battery charger first. I don't know what I would have done, Mm-hmm. But it's funny that you say that, because you're kind of like, just fix the car. You fix your own car then. Like, the people come in and they're like, well, we got we watched a YouTube video and they said that it's only 7 minutes and it's no, they took a 7-minute video and it's an hour-long process to get a headlight out of the back of a 2010 Chevy Malibu to change a
That's
brake
the power of
bulb.
editing, my friend. Yeah.
Yeah,
If you ever see the bolts go from the car to in his hand, you don't know how long it took. That's what I'll say.
And what wrench and how many
Yeah.
swear words and everything else.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. Yeah. And honestly, in the dealership realm, for me, one of the things I do enjoy about my job a lot is there are some times where it's a customer that isn't going to fix their car here, and they can't afford to. And it's like, I've spent 6 years there now, right? And so, like, I'm not going to go deep inside what it could be in your engine that's causing this problem, but if it's something that's like these 3 things off the top of my head that always happen, yeah, I'll tell you. I'll tell you it's probably that part. Why? Because then you'll at least you might buy the part from me, but at least you're better off than you were before.
Right.
The knowledge is what helps you progress, I think.
And that comes with experience, too. I mean, just maintaining or doing your job, you pick up stuff that you didn't know before. And, I mean, you being Christian and stuff like that, you don't want to screw anybody over more than, I mean, not that you screw anybody over, but you don't want to take advantage of anybody if you don't have to.
Right, we have to follow the law of the land, but we don't have to agree with it.
Right.
well, and the thing is too, I mean, a mechanic is a lot like you were talking about earlier with the church. One mechanic scorns you, now all of a sudden these mechanics are bad guys and they want to take all your money. I mean, there are a lot of them that are like that. It's true. I mean, and it's difficult whenever you have people come in and they've been hurt before and they're like, we just want answers. It's hard to explain to them, look, you don't realize there are 7 different things that could be. And if it's not those 7, it could be 49 others. So
Right.
they really need to see it, and they're like, well, we just want answers over the phone. You don't get just answers over the phone.
Oh, yeah.
And it's easy to understand, like, these
Right,
people are like,
yeah.
no, you want to get it on the rack, then you're going to cut a brake line and tell me I need brake lines, and no, I don't want you looking at my car, sorry. Bing! It's like, all right, well, I'm sorry, but, like, you don't just, it does this. Oh, okay, well, that is, what year is it? Okay, yeah, that's definitely that.
I think what works best for me on those certain situations is overloading them with information. So like he's like, I just want to know, and you go, okay, well it could be this, or this. Which one do you think it's going to be, buddy? We can flip a coin and go that way, and then they'll go, oh, because then it's like an illustration in a way.
Yeah.
Because you have those customers that want to push you and want to think that they're going to get it right and that they can tell you how it's going to be. And not that we all need to love our neighbors by all means, for sure. But yeah, when I get those ones that are hurt, and it's like, well, here, I'll tell you all the information, and then now you have 4 ways to go.
Now you get to make that executive decision.
You'll
and
come
figure out
back
what
and
you
ask
wanna
me to
do.
diagnose
Yep.
it now, because you know it could be 4 different things. Like you said, 9 options, but without like legitimately naming them off and realizing that they all go in different directions.
Yeah.
No one's going to relay that. They just think you're lying to
Yeah.
them.
We had a guy, he brought his car in a couple weeks ago, and it was like I want to say it was a power steering pump. But anyways, it was a Mercedes hatchback. The guy's kind of hard to understand anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And so he comes in and he's barking orders and he slams the keys down and leaves. And I'm like, okay, what in the world? So his wife comes in behind him and she's nice to talk to and stuff. Well, from get-go, he's just being a jerk to me. He's just hateful. He's mean. Well, he ends up coming back a week after we get done doing his work. And he's got a leak in his thermostat housing. Well, it was the thermostat housing we replaced in the first place. Power steering pump, he didn't want to replace it when we did that. So now it starts leaking. Well, James is like, man, I hate, it's not our part. I mean, we know it doesn't look good, but, so he comes in and he's getting mad at me, blah, 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 and I'm like, he comes in Wednesday, and he's like, I want a battery. And the devil's like, all right, tell him, okay, well, I'm like, I'm not doing, I don't want to sell this guy a battery. Like, I'm like, all right, yeah, okay, yeah. He leaves, comes back, and it's like a 2000, 2002 or 3 or something like that. So you got to take the battery out from underneath the seat. Well, James quoted him a price, and he didn't realize what battery it was. So he calls the guy back, and he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry about this quote." He's like, "No, I work at Walmart. I'll buy one." Guy comes in, and I'm like, I told myself that morning, I was like, if he badmouths me or tries to stand up to me, I'm gonna let him know how I feel because I'm not gonna be talked to like this.
Right.
So he comes in and hateful, 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 sits down in the chair and he spills his coffee, and I'm cleaning his coffee up off of the floor, and he's mad. Sorry, he was like, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, you're fine. You're completely fine. I've got this. He's like, I've just had a bad day. And I'm like, no, I get it, man. We all have bad days. Start talking to him. Come to find out, he'd spent like 69 days in the hospital. He had diverticulitis, almost died. And he lifts up his shirt and he shows me, as nice as I can say this, his poo bag, And I'm thinking to myself, like, I wouldn't show a random stranger. You know what I mean? Like, that's, to me, that would, I'm not making fun of him, but to me, that's too personal. I wouldn't want to show, but I was like, this guy trusts me. So just sit and talk with him. That's my favorite part about the job. And I begin to realize that people hold up an exterior and they have a shield, but you begin to realize that once you treat them nice, that's all that they just need to see, that part of you, that niceness, that compassion, that, hey, sometimes you need to talk about your situations to people.
Oh,
and that was the fun part about that, was realizing that the devil didn't win that, because I was going to let him know how I felt. I was going to scare him off if I would have done that. So what ended up happening was he forgot his wallet, and it was like $69. They charged him to put this battery in. So I paid it for him because he didn't have his wallet. And dude just broke down and started crying. He was like, nobody's ever done that for me. I'm so thank you. And I was like, $69. You know what I mean? But God took that $69 and he broke this brick of a man that was hateful down, and he made, the Lord literally right in front of me made dinner, a table in front of my enemies with that guy, and that guy come and sat next to me. That's what I love. And I know, like, we're a smaller shop, so I don't know about how personal you get to get with the employees, but like that was pretty cool for me to experience stuff like that.
So we have a pretty small parts department. There's only 4 people in it for 3 car lines. It's actually pretty small. The guy I sit next to most of my time, he's another avid Christian. He's not, as far as I know, in between churches. He used to go to James River. I believe it was James River, but has, going their own ways. And there's a church for everybody.
Yep.
That's the thing. There is a church for everybody. Go to one that makes you feel
well, and where God can use you.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would agree part of that, because we do get front counter customers, and like for me, I'm supposed to charge them for a key fob battery. I still have to bill out that key fob battery because it is there's an account in our system. There's sometimes though where our service drive buys the battery, or I will buy it if they're not, let them line up and take care of it kind of thing. Because the customer comes in, their key fob says it's going off. It could be the battery, it could be the bad key fob. But typically when that happens, they're already having a bad day one way or another because it's late. They were late for work because the thing came on and took a while to start or whatever have you. But just this one's on us. Don't worry about it.
Unless it's a scheduled oil change, typically people aren't going to the mechanic for fun.
Right.
It's not something, you're not going there for a good time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Absolutely. So they'll be in there with a grumpy face and then they turn around and they're smiling. And I mean, it's interesting. The whole, I'm sure you've seen it. How many you get wide range of people from left and right, and I mean not like politically. I'm just saying like the most angry to the most outgoingly spoken person in the room kind of thing show up at your counter. And
you'll have people come in and they'll talk to you like you're their best friend, and they leave, and James is like, you know who that guy is? He owns this and this, and like he's a multimillionaire,
right.
And he's wearing shorts with holes in them and a shirt, and he's like, yep, just got off work, put in 40 hours this week, and it's only Wednesday. I'm like, what's that man do, And it's another thing, too, is like you see a Mercedes pull up, and you're like, all of a sudden you're like, what's this guy do? This guy's going to be a jerk. He's in a Mercedes,
It's 'cause
come in and
broke.
he's nice. And then you've got the guys that pull up in the broke down Chevy Cavalier 2000, and they're as nice as can be, and you treat them. It's funny to see the people, how they all boil down to the same. They're all different, but it boils down to the same thing.
Mhm.
Essentially, you just want to be heard. At the end of the day, they just want to be felt like they were taken care of and not taken advantage of.
Listen to.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. We had a customer up on our service drive, and it was the first time he was at our dealership, and the first thing he said to our service writer was, if I don't get what I want, I'm going to jump on your table, and I'm going to screech and dance on your table. And I mean, we're in the middle of a waiting area service drive, like customers buying cars, and it's like, what do you say to that even?
I'd whip my phone out and be like, extra loud, please. My microphone ain't too well.
Ended up, that guy started off that conversation, but I mean, in the end, when you actually listened to him and helped him out, they did a good amount of service work with us because he needed it repaired. But
Mhm.
like, people just, like you said, want to be listened to and heard, and sadly, on both sides of it, I think society is pushing that to be the importance, is to be heard.
Yep.
And again, God doesn't always need you to be speaking sometimes,
No, but there are also times where you have to speak.
For sure.
So that's where I like that you said that, because in society it has become all about what is comfortable for you. Like, you made the comment about the church. There's a church out there for everybody. There's a difference in finding a comfortable church and being comfortable at church.
Oh, for sure.
Like, if you're looking for a comfortable church, that means, hey, I don't mind. I like this place because I can wake up at 10:30. Service is done at 11:30. I'm home by noon. Boom, we're good.
Mhm.
You're not going there for the conviction of the Lord. You're going there for the convenience. How can I still make it sound like I'm going to church without it really bothering me?
How
And
can I
so-
go to church and hide?
Exactly.
So,
You
And what's
Yeah.
the best church for me? And I'm not saying that, there are multiple church services for a reason.
Mhm.
For you to go to church. So I'm not dogging multiple church
Right.
service. Not at all. That's not what I was. But my point is like, whenever you're trying to find a church, not because you are looking for the church that God's leading you to, when you're looking for a church that's convenient, I can walk across the street to it.
You'll end up noticing your faith isn't strong enough
Yep.
in those kind of situations. Like you said, church isn't for everybody, but like at the same time, 2 years being here, I can count for every day that my shoulder got slapped on the back for doing right ahead of schedule of what I've been, sermon or whatever, versus the gut punch of getting put back on the right path in a sense, Our church, there are days where you will just get, it hits you wrong. And you know what? You're the one taking it wrong, or
Yep.
you're the one, it's on you. That problem is on you, not the church, at least. And I'm not saying that to try to be hurtful or hateful, because people go through a lot of things in life that we aren't going to notice and take things differently because of said things. But God loves all of us and will meet us where we're at, but we have to then still grow.
Yep.
Forward. We can't just stay stagnant in that. Is
That's
kind of what I'm saying.
You don't grow standing still.
Right.
I mean, and that, to realize, like we said earlier, there are people that could literally go nonstop, and they're fine with it. That's the life that they love. My wife's aunt and uncle are like that. They'll have a kid that's got a tournament going on in Kansas City while the other one's got one going on in St. Louis, and then the 4-year-old has a soccer game, and they're just everywhere all the time. And it's like, you don't ever go home and sit down and enjoy it? Oh, well, we've got this and this to do tomorrow, and this, and it's like, wow. So, like, there are people that's what they can just do that, and that's fine. And so it kind of goes back into that finding your church. Just because the church isn't always moving the direction you want it to go doesn't mean they're a bad church.
Right.
It doesn't mean that their church isn't headed in the right way. It just means that their church, God is doing something, a different work in their church. He's not. We're not going to have fireworks on stage. It's we're not going to do it. Fire Marshal Larry, first of all. I mean, ching, 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 ching. I don't know if he'd
we
allow
would
it.
have fireworks
Oh,
on stage.
we
if we were
would
allowed.
if we had a bigger sanctuary.
No, just if we were just allowed. It didn't matter the size. That was not a question
Yeah.
in this. It was, Larry, can we do it? No.
We would have Roman candles up there if
Yeah.
we could. Yeah.
Some people, out of a bigger worship, that grandness, there's nothing wrong with that. At home church, we have a gentleman sitting in a chair that's going to click with a mouse like over there to get the lights to appear up. It's a different, but the spirit's still the same.
You're right.
Because we're not worried about us. Are we? We've got to do this. We're doing this for God. We're doing this for God.
Absolutely.
We're bringing this around to Him. And I don't even, it's hard to say, because I ask people all the time, it really does strike me. I ask people all the time, do you remember the exact moment when, for instance, whenever we were talking about, do you remember whenever you were to realize that Caitlin's accident was to help you mature? And you made the comment, it's so difficult because by the time it's happened, it's already happened, and you're like, oh, I've grown from that, I've learned from that. Whenever it comes to church and stuff, we tend to forget that it's not about it's like not about us. It's about us, but it's not about us. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like that question I ask you. It's like, God's here. God's taking control of everything. He's asking us to be mobile, to be liquid, to form to Him. He's not forming to us and helping us. We are being Him in a sense. I don't know how to. It's difficult to.
It's like bob and weave, shake.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the
Prepared for
thing.
anything?
Be prepared for anything, and you can't let things. You can't let what this world thinks bother you. It's difficult whenever you have somebody say, "Oh yeah, that song was good, but I feel like we could have used a orange background on that." And you're like, "Oh yeah, well where were you Tuesday night at 6:30 at night whenever I was here setting up the backgrounds for it?" You get that mentality of it, and then all of a sudden you're spiteful at everybody.
Right.
And God's like, "That's not them saying that. That's the devil. They're trying to get you worked up. The devil knows that you're selfish. The devil knows that you're going to take that to heart. So this orange background thing." And you get to the point to where those things bother you, and then now it's like, hey, that orange, it would have looked better as an orange background. You're like, okay, I'll keep that in mind.
You might be right.
Yeah.
Just don't, it might be orange next time. It might not be.
Yeah. But
I've forgotten, sadly.
Yeah.
But like the whole, just seeing people change in church and seeing how it changes you, you don't have to have the big this, you don't have to have the big that, but at the same time, you don't have to be a small church. You just have to welcome God. Like, that's all it's about.
Absolutely.
It's just a place that on Sunday is holding the Lord's Spirit, and we are blessed enough that He allows us Sunday mornings to come into this place and to work for Him. It's a blessing to work for Him.
It is.
And so the confusion of what I was trying to say earlier is now the Spirit is starting to bring it back. I was talking about being like fluid, and I didn't really know how to describe it. You have to realize that people are people, and that just because we're here in church, it doesn't mean that the devil's, he's not going to try to, he's going to try. He's going to try more than ever. That's why whenever you're not walking with the Lord, and it seems easier to not walk with the Lord.
Oh, yeah.
So whenever we get here at church, that part doesn't leave. We're still sinners. We're still flesh and bone. That part of us comes in here to church, and we get changed by the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So just, it's cool to hear people that come from, I think were the Converse, were they Pentecostal?
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah. if
They
I
were
remember correctly.
Pentecostal,
Yeah.
Methodist, James River is Assemblies of God Baptist.
Yeah, I grew up Baptist. Yeah.
I mean, I went Baptist Assemblies of God, and we went to the Happening, which was basically a non-denomination. We were in a Methodist church, but I mean, it wasn't like the Happening. This is the Baptist Happening. But we were in a Methodist church. The Spirit's still there. So we get so consumed in when we go to church, what do people think about us whenever we're praising, whenever we're worshiping? God's asking you to be here for Him.
Right.
So quit worrying about what you sound like whenever you sing. Quit worrying about what you look like when you raise your hands. Quit worrying about this. You're here for God. So that's the cool part about a church is, doesn't matter how small, you get to meet people and do things like this. Out of home church. 2 years ago, it had been steady, probably 8 years since I had been steady in church. To go from that to now not only wanting to be here to do stuff like this, but whenever you almost feel weird not being here for a certain amount of time, like if I don't have to do a practice on a Tuesday and it's only Wednesday and Sunday, it's like, what day of the week is it? Like, it doesn't feel right. Like, it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like it's been
feels off if
forever
you're not
since
here,
you've been here. And like the Winfields, you could have the Winfields, they've only been gone, or they'll only be gone one Sunday, and they come back the next one, you're like, it's been forever since I've seen you. And they're like, we've only been missing 1 week. We missed last week. It's like, oh, that's right. It's just like a family. You're so used to seeing your family every
Right.
day, it feels like,
You're right.
when you don't see one of them. And that's what I love about home church is it's not, you don't look at it as we're going to church. We got to get up and go to church.
No. And with how much movement happens of God in our church, man, it's to the point where it's like there are days, the devil wake up and you're like, you're not feeling it today. But it's like, you're not actually sick. You just don't want to go. Why? Because you need to go. I found more and more I want to be here to either experience just experience God, really, and community. But, like, it's a driving force to going now. And, like, when you miss a day, you feel it. You notice it.
Yeah.
At least, maybe not on Sunday, but you will by the middle of that week.
Yeah.
That you missed the Lord this week.
That
If you're
Tuesday
only
and
coming
Wednesday.
on Sundays, you should be more than that, but...
Yeah, that Tuesday and Wednesday are hitting different. It's not the same.
It's weird.
It feels weird when you're not here.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact that everybody has an impact on everything, like people notice you when you're not here, or notice you when you are here. I mean, that's how community-based our church is. Chris has been gone for almost a year now, and it's still crazy that, the impact and stuff like that he has on everybody.
Yeah.
So it's crazy, and we're all excited for when he comes home. Next month, I think, right?
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a fun time when he comes home. So.
I feel like the last time that we got to see him. Did we go to Pizza Ranch? Is that where we ate?
I think
the
that
last
was.
time he
Yeah,
was
I think
at
that
the-
was the last time he was here. So it's been a fat minute.
Yeah.
So I think almost a year, or a little longer than a year since he's been gone. But
All right, gentlemen. We are about what do we got over there?
almost 2.5 hours. So
Almost 2.5
Jacob,
hours.
you are officially our longest podcast so far.
That's because of all the sweeping turns of off topic, back on topic. Oh, yep.
And then the whole work, talking about cars and all that fun stuff too. So
Oh, man.
that could go on for hours. I know you got all kinds of hobbies with cars, and then not just the cars, but RC cars, games, sports, all that fun stuff that you do in your pastime. But for you and Kaylin, as the Woody household now, what's the next steps for you guys?
I'm trying to live more in the moments because I've found that over planning tends to make you skip things, or you can go both ways. Under planning and doing nothing isn't good. So you're better to be in the moment and saying yes to anything that God asks you to do. But as of pre-planning, tends to muddle the actual getting it done part. I've noticed. For me and my wife, we've been praying to God, and honestly, I'm waiting for God to tell me what's the next step. Hoping for a kid, working for a kid, praying and thanking for a kid, but that's just one mark on the whole thing of the rest of your life kind of thing, you know?
Right.
So one thing that I want to start doing is, I think as Christians, we tend to not realize how much God wants good for us. And I think the God of the impossible, I think sometimes we limit God to what he is capable of. So one thing that I want to start doing is I want to start asking our guests at the end of it a goal. What is your goal by, and I know obviously it's going to be less time for some than others depending on, but we're just going to start out with a year. By the end of the year, what's a goal that you yourself, whether it's a new, I don't know, like I know, let's just, a new vehicle or a new this, I would like to see this, just so that way we can hold each other to goals. You know, we're there for each other, so that way I can be like, hey, you know, you this, how's it going? Well, if you're giving up on it and it's like, you know, I don't, you know, I kind of thought it was something I wanted to get into, then that's one thing. But like if, obviously, children, that's a goal. So I'm not talking like the children aspect of it, but just something to make you better personally. What's one of your goals? I'm not asking for a New Year's resolution, lose 50 pounds.
Right. Honestly, get more confident in what I know I can do, because again, I think I do. I don't know if everybody deals with this, but you know, you got the devil always telling you the negatives. They never tell us, you know, God does tell you the positives, but you got one shouting while one's whispering, you know. When you're quiet enough, you can hear the whisper, but when you're not, you're going to hear the yelling. And so for me, it's the progression of being more getting more strength in the things I know I can do well and do them better. One, like, you know, hoping, not that I don't like the job I'm in currently, but you know, always going up is nice.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, progressing forward in stuff I can do well and getting better and better at the things that I am lacking in. I wish I had a more specific thing.
No, that's,
yeah.
You don't have to start off major. You know, everybody wants to start off with the moon, and it's like, hey, let's chisel.
I mean,
Chisel.
Every journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So I mean, just trying
Pastor
to.
Clayton.
Words.
How do you, no, well, no, Pastor
That's
Clayton used to
right.
say, what's the best way to eat an elephant? Start at one end. I mean, it's
One
got
piece
your,
at a time.
yeah,
one bite.
so, but that's something that I think maybe you don't, whenever somebody asks for prayer, you know, what do you need prayer for? And we're like, oh, well, you know, everything's pretty good. You know, I'm not homeless. My vehicle is running, you know, I'm not sick, so I really don't need prayer. And I think one thing that I've started doing in the youth, because you ask a kid, hey, what do you need prayer for? Nope. And they put their head, and so it's like, okay, well, if you don't need prayer, then I want you to give praise, something about your life that is you're thankful for. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, merging that in with the whole, I don't even know where I was going with that, because I was trying to
Tie it in.
Well, no, I was trying to cut it off because I didn't want to go any longer. But
I think we just start asking our guests.
Oh, that's what it was.
For. Yeah.
Well, no. I think that's where I was going with that. The reason that I said something about the goal was because I think as a Christian you can look so into work that you are like, no, I don't even want to think about God blessing me with something, because that would seem like I'm wanting something, and that seems like I'm this and this and this. So as you don't
want to be a burden.
You don't want to be a burden, and you're not. So I think we tend to leave our goals out, and we seem to not. So whenever it comes to somebody wanting to be able to push more for things that they want, that is a goal, and you can have God help you with it, you know. But we're also here for each other. So that way, whenever the devil is talking to you, and you say, you know, you can't hear that whisper, we're right here, and we can be like, hey man, how's that goal you were talking about going? And you can be like, oh, I need to be held accountable for that. Yeah.
I will say one thing that I am working on is I do have a anger switch that is almost like you wake up on the wrong side of the bed and nothing you can do is going to stop that from being a thing. And I know I've had it for a while and I do actively think about it, but that is one that that's one I want to get done by this year, hopefully.
Yeah.
More patience, more everything, but just that anxious anger, like everything just sets you off.
Yeah.
That's the days that I can't stand because I know I'm finally out of the hole enough to know that that's not me, but I can't stop it from happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, knowing that you want more self-confidence and you're anxious anger, what else could we be praying for you for? I mean, and of course, having children and stuff like that. That's a given. We've talked about that several times. So.
Another thing I've been trying to fight for is my purpose in Christianity. Not so much my purpose as a father or as a husband or in society, because it's pretty easy. Go get a job and just keep the job, and you're doing what you're supposed to do as a man. But
yeah, pay your taxes.
and in a church basis, what's my purpose? How can I better serve? Should I have been a parts guy? I guess sort of ties into it, but not really. More if it's like a teacher kind of aspect, I guess. But yeah, what hole in the church am I supposed to fill? I guess that's it.
The best advice that I can give you for the first one, if I have any advice at all about trying to figure out and understanding, like anger was one of my big issues too. Any advice that I could give you at all is the best part is realizing that what you just said. It's who you were. And it's frustrating because I'll tell Brooklyn every time, and I cry. I mean, there a couple months ago, broke down and just had a day where I just cried because it's like I know what I used to be. I know what I used to do. Why am I still getting angry?
Mm-hmm.
And then you begin to get upset and you're like, I haven't changed at all. And it's like the very fact that you're realizing that you used to be that and that you want to work on that, feed off of that and realize that just realize where the Lord's brought you out of. Mm-hmm. That's because it's difficult. Whenever I was like you, I just wanted to be a part of something to serve, to be a part of something. And it was the kids ministry, and it started back here, and now it's gone to this and this and this and this. And as soon as I thought, I was like, okay, well, it's just the media. God doesn't want me to do this kids ministry at all. I'm glad I don't have to preach to kids because kids are hateful and mean, and I get to be back here in the booth. And God was like, oh, no, you're just getting started, sir.
You done messed up. You said yes, buddy.
Yeah, and so my advice to you would be whatever you think God has got for you, do a 180 and expect yourself to be up in the choir sometime because you don't know, or not choir, but a worship in the worship team, because it's crazy. He wants you right here, not knowing. Because if you know, then these things that have to make you to get you where you're at, you're not going to pay attention to those things. You got to pay attention to those things. And it's just great to see, it's great to hear that's what you're striving for, that's what you want. And like I said, the best advice that I can give you is knowing what you were and realizing where he brought you out of and that you're right here. And you're going to have those days where it's like, man, what's going on? Like,
what's the point?
What's the point in this? I'm just going to go ahead and I don't want to do this anymore. This is a lot, but it's that moment when you realize that's what the old me would say. God's brought me out of that. We're going to push through this. And then the next day's gone. And you were like, oh, I was mad yesterday, wasn't I? Well, that was kind of foolish.
Yeah.
that's all I've got. We're gonna go ahead and give her the old shutdown because I know that this one, although very good, they'll probably make a couple of
Yeah.
they'll make a couple of sets out of this one. We hope you guys enjoyed this as much as we did. Jacob, it's been a pleasure. And is there any words that you would like to say for newcomers of home church or those that have been at home church but maybe don't know Jacob as well as hopefully they do after this podcast?
First, thanks for having me on, guys. It was a blessing and a pleasure for me. And people who don't know me too well, probably on Sunday I'm going to be smiling, but I'm probably going to be moving and like handing. One of the biggest things I like to do is take the stands out there in the parking lot and pick them up on the end of service so that no one else has to do it. Like I'm almost like
Pick heavy stuff up and put it
dude,
back
like
down.
it is a thing. Like if I see someone moving, like even inching that way, I'm gonna run out there and do it. But just that I'm a happy-go-lucky person, and that I hope that you get to see God's love at least when you see my smile or something.
Yeah, the big jolly giant that's out front.
I
on
try.
Sunday.
I will be out there this Sunday, so if you've listened, I will be out there tomorrow. Give me a hug.
Tomorrow, 9 o'clock, Rev. Don't know how many pages he's got for us.
He's probably recovering from last week, so I'm expecting like 2
he
or
seemed
3.
pretty.
So
I don't know. He might just do the mic drop thing and make
you
everybody
ne-
else talk.
you never know.
He seemed pretty peppy this morning. I mean, he had a lot of energy in him.
pack a lunch just to be safe. You never know.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Service starts at 9, goes till, say, 10:30.
11 on the latest.
yeah. You never know. 11:30, 12.
Don't make
Whatever.
dinner or lunch reservations till after 11, guys. Most of them aren't open anyway.
And you can find us over here on 1549 West Battlefield, right across from Hy-Vee. So we open the doors right around, what? I don't even know. 8:30?
8:30ish.
8:30
And then,
for sure.
Yeah, service kicks off at 9, and we hope to see you guys here. We love you. Stay blessed.
Before we
Oh,
head out,
my bad.
one thing that we would like to let everybody be aware of, this summer, we are going to try to head a men's Bible study.
Oh, yeah. Completely forgot about that.
We don't have all of the foundations up yet. We don't even have when, where, what. Just to give you guys a heads up, if you have any ideas, any suggestions at all, this summer, going to try to fit in a couple myself before Willow's born, but we are going to try to have about a 6-8 week Bible study, men's Bible study. We're not going to make it glitzy, glamoury, anything like that. We're going to get to the heart of it, which is God's Word. Like I said, we haven't figured out, pinpointed the details. We haven't put the finishing touches on anything. Just getting the bug out there. If there are any ideas, any times that work best for anybody, let us know. And we're not going to promise you guys anything, but we'll definitely take into considerations and try to figure something out. So, got that in the works.
And there is a board. Well, I say a board. There's 4 of us that are trying to come up with that. So it's not just 1 or 2 of us trying to make a decision. So there's at least 4 of us that are going to try to spearhead this. That way we can make a decision. And if one of us can't make it that week, like I have to work nights, then someone else can lead it that week and stuff like that. So that way, no matter what time it is, that way at least one of the 4 of us can be there trying to help everybody out.
All right, everybody, we love you. And as always, thank you for listening. And until next time,
Stay blessed.